Okay. All right. Am I ready?
Hang on.
Do I? Jesse needs.
I have one.
I got one.
I didn't check to make sure your microphones were on, guys. I'm sorry. You do that.
A little light on.
Makes do this. Or need to find me.
Right here on the front, it's really small. There's a little button on the side, you press and hold, so the blue light comes on. Yeah, it's not. Oh, yeah, not exactly obvious.
I should figure out. Okay, we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, good afternoon, council. I'm going to call to order the July 29, 2025 Parkersburg Special Town Council meeting to order. All members of the council are physically present with the exception of David Simmons.
Somebody text him.
Anyway,
Make sure.
motion to approve the agenda.
One amendment, I would like to move up item 3. I'll see if I have this.
The whole agenda
Okay.
is malleable.
Oh, if that's the thing, yeah,
Yeah.
if we can be fluid.
We're going to be jumping around, Storm, so.
Great.
Are there any other attempts at the agenda change? All right, how about a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, we have that from Storm. Do I have a motion to? All in favor of the motion? Okay, motion carries 6-0. So we're going to get into. I just want to make a couple opening comments, and then we'll start going through the agenda. We're going to be here for a while. This is a critical opportunity for all of us, for some of us to rekindle our understanding, and for some of us this will be new, particularly Jesse, and it's been a couple of years with Christian. It'll be new for David when he comes in, and it'll also be a nice refresher for Kevin. What we do in the finance end of it in the town is incredibly complicated. We have, and I will put Debbie up against any finance officer in Jefferson County. She does an incredible job of keeping up with everything. And I told Debbie the story when I first became a council member in 2011 or 29, I can't remember. And I attended the first meeting, and they were going over the finances. And I'm looking at the stuff before the meeting, and I turned to a council member and I said, what is all this, and what is this, and what is that, and all that? And the council member basically says, everything is good, just when we get to that point, just, vote for it. Now, I couldn't do that. So what I did, I took the finances and I started to look at them and study them, and so that I understood, and the reason I did that is that 7 of us are empowered with the responsibility to maintain the financial integrity of a small municipality, a municipality that has about $2.1 or $2.2 million in its budget. I take that very seriously, and I know that this group does also. I will also say that the individuals that work as closely as possible with Debbie is the Budget and Finance Committee, which consists of Storm is chairing it, Jesse, and Chris. So they have an awesome responsibility, and they will really, as you go through the 2 years, Jesse, you really will get into the nuts and bolts of finances. So I do thank all of you for taking time out of your schedule on a Tuesday afternoon, ungodly hot outside. But we wouldn't have called this meeting if we didn't think it was urgent, and particularly going over the finances. And then we have several new business items here. So if I may, let me ask the Appalachian Chamber Music Festival, Debbie, if that's okay, to make a presentation at this time. And
and
do you have
why don't you come on up and sit here, Paul, and then Storm maybe can help with that. And I would suggest that we just review the request, which was approved in the fiscal 26 budget, and then just kind of hold that information in your mind until we get to the part in the meeting where you actually approve revision 1 of the general fund for fiscal 26. Then we'll approve this spending request, so you're not kind of doing that in reverse.
Right.
Well, oh, go ahead.
Well, we're very excited to be back for our opening night on the 8th, August 8th. We had an organizational meeting with National Park Service, Harpers Ferry Park Association, ACMF. Everything's well coordinated and everybody's responsibilities are clear. So this year will be the concert will be Howard Burns Ensemble and then the Appalachian Chamber Music Festival musicians and a Don Ridden series, and that will be an evening time concert. Our request has been lowered based on the budget advice, and also we held off until we were sure of some other grants, and we had received a confirmation from the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation for their grant support. So the amount that we're asking for Harpers Ferry is a little less than half the musicians' cost and the sound cost. We had had some other miscellaneous costs that we deleted because we got support from the Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation. So our request is for $23.75. And we have some other concerts in Harpers Ferry, one at the United Methodist Church and the pop-up thing, but this is not part of our request.
So just for clarification, so this is just one concert of the series, and this is the one that is going to be free to the public. That's in coordination with the Park Service.
Yes.
Right. And a sheet was submitted with this information. It appears that Harpers Ferry is covering about 30% of the total cost, with the other costs being covered by well, it's listed as TBD and the Park Association.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Paul?
Where on the camp?
It's
store?
on the lawn in front of the Matthews Building and Store.
And is it at 7?
It's at 7. And
Just Jesse background, David isn't here, I covered this with him as well. So this is funding that was previously approved by the prior council, and this is where they're stepping forward and say, okay, we're ready to either spend this or be reimbursed for it, and documentation is always required before that happens. So I'm going to make a motion that will put this in motion. I move to reimburse $2,375 to the Appalachian Chamber Music Festival in support of their August 8th concert in Harpers Ferry.
Maybe before I take a second, Debbie, do you want to?
Could you add pending the approval of fiscal 26 revision
Sure.
1?
Pending approval of fiscal year 26 revision 1.
Okay. Now is there a second? Second from Chris, discussion. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Enjoy the weather.
it's going to be cool.
Yeah, maybe nice on August 8th.
Thank you. Okay, so we have on the table some folders. Everybody should get a pink, green, and yellow folder, or purple, green, and yellow folder. And we're going to start with the purple folder.
Thanks.
Pass that down.
Tertell, Tertell.
Thank you.
And he owns a building, and he owns a house in town. Down by the cemetery. Oh, that's for me?
Right. Just like their animals.
All right, and I am going to and so what I'm doing here. There we go. All right. So this is we're going to first go through the structure of the municipality, how we get our funds, where they come from, what we can and can't do with them. We're going to talk about our water utility and our relationship with that utility, both from a responsibility and a financial perspective. and again, how funding comes and goes from there. And then we're going to get into purchasing policies and procedures, and at the end in the yellow folder will be information about how we review and analyze our financials so that you can make decisions. I'm going to try to do this on the screen, but if it gets too tedious because I can only show part of the screen and it would still be legible, let me know, because I can just sit at the table and we can talk through it. But I thought this way we can be showing this live as well. Okay, so everybody on page 1 that says revenue at the top of the big blue circle in the middle. All right, so we are the Corporation of Harpers Ferry. It is a public entity and it is owned by the citizens of Harpers Ferry. We receive our purpose, it's administered by the elected town council, the mayor and the recorder, and for the purposes of providing public safety to our community, town administration and asset management, planning, zoning, permits, ordinance compliance, and infrastructure planning and implementation. We receive revenue from property taxes, state lotteries, severance funds, licenses, B&O taxes, room occupancy taxes, municipal taxes, other business licenses, as well as licenses other than business licenses, like parking revenue, tickets and citations, building permits. That's where all of our revenue comes from in order to do the work of public safety, asset management, zoning, and infrastructure. It just so happens that this organization owns a public utility called Harpers Ferry Water Works. And that, we're going to talk about that in a little more detail in just a few seconds. But it is a water utility. It could be a hamburger stand. It could be a beauty shop, but it is a public water utility. So it is a business. It lives outside of the corporation, even though the corporation owns it. All right, so going on to page 2 now, here's a little more information about the water utility itself. It, again, is owned by Corporation of Harpers Ferry. The product that it provides is service to the populations of Harpers Ferry, Bolivar, and Jefferson County for drinking water, fire service water, customer service, billing for Harpers Ferry Water Works, and also for Harpers Ferry, Bolivar Public Service District, the sewer company. So there's a service that's provided by our organization for that. So where do we get the revenue from to operate this utility? We get that from selling water. We may get grants, federal or state grants. We also provide these billing services, so we bill for those services, so that's a billable sale of services. We also generate reserves, which we will talk about so that you understand what the reserves are when we get to the yellow folder. But we set aside a certain amount of our reserves based on revenue that's generated in a given month to be used for specific state sanctioned purposes. And that also can then go back into work that can be done under the Underwater Works. So when you own a company, many of us sitting in this room own companies, there's always the option, particularly if it's a sole proprietorship or maybe it's an LLC or something like that, where you may have the opportunity to take money out of your pocket and put it into that company because it might need it. It might need a little capital boost. It might need a cash flow boost. And you, as the owner of that company, have the opportunity to do that in the way that we operate in business in the American world. One could argue that the same holds true here. Here is this organization called the Corporation of Harpers Ferry, and it owns this water company. So it should be able to just give money to that company when it wants to. But it's a little bit of a different conundrum here. First of all, the corporation is actually owned by the citizens, and all the money that we have sitting in the bank to do the work that we need to do is actually the citizens' money. It is not the town council's money. It's not anybody else's money, and you are elected to administer the money, but it is the town's money. The other thing that's a little complicated about this is that the product that we generate coming out of the waterworks is used to service the populations of not only Harpers Ferry, but Bolivar and Jefferson County. So when you think about your responsibility to the citizens for the monies that you are going to approve for spending or disbursement, you have to consider that if you take money out of the general fund and you give it to the water department, then you're not only servicing the citizens of Harpers Ferry, but you're also assisting the services that are provided to the citizens of Bolivar and to Jefferson County. And so you have to consider whether that is something that the citizens of Harpers Ferry would want. And if we ever get into a situation where we really want to do something dynamic like that, in the end, it depending on the circumstance, it really may even come down to a vote that is required by the citizens to say, yes, we agree that we want to do this. There are some circumstances, and we have spent, in the last administration, we spent extensive time working with our legal advisors, our town attorney and our water attorney, to make sure that we uncovered every stone about any which way that we could provide funding to shore up the water utility and, perhaps delay or defer or not require a rate increase in certain circumstances. And there's only one revenue source that is allowable, and that is from our cell tower rentals. The property, all the property of the utility is owned by the Corporation of Harpers Ferry. That means that the property that the water tanks reside on is owned by the town, and therefore, ultimately, the town owns the tower, the water towers, and the leases that are made for the cell towers that are on there are with the town. So the revenue comes into our general fund, and it is the town's money. Now, because it is on the water towers, both of our attorneys have agreed that it is viable for this income that comes into the general fund to be provided into the revenue of the water utility, but not just on an ongoing perpetual basis. Each council would need to approve fiscal year by fiscal year if and how much of that revenue they would want to deliver into the water utility. So you may recall from the end of last fiscal year, the council chose to provide to the water utility the entire fiscal year amount of cell tower revenue that was received. Purpose of that was that there were some cash flow issues, which is kind of a completely different discussion. I'm probably not going to get into that today, but much of that is being resolved. However, the timing of those resolutions were really putting the utility into a cash flow issue. And so that is why the council went ahead and approved that revenue stream to be diverted. The other method by which you could say is putting revenue into the system, but really it's just providing monies for a shared expense, is when we truly do have a shared expense. So it just so happens that because we are sitting here in this building and we are administering the town and we're administering waterworks, and the corporation owns both of those entities, we can enter into contracts with phone companies, internet companies, various utilities, our cleaning people, our contracts for our copier. We have two employees who spend much of their time with the water, doing work with the water, and much of their time doing work with general fund. So they are kind of a shared, they have a shared relationship between both of those entities. In order to properly allocate expenses between the two quote companies, we do split up that that amount of expense. So let's say the telephone bill for this building is $300, for instance. There's actually 3 entities in here. We've got this general administration up here. Downstairs, we got the police department, and we also have the water department. All 3 of those places are benefiting from that, from that telephone service. You'll see when we get to the general fund budget that there's a section in the general fund budget dedicated to the police department and to City Hall. So we take that bill and we divide it 3 ways. Part of it comes out of water, part of it comes out of general, and part of it comes out of the police department. Sometimes it so happens that, you know, because of the way the account was set up, the water revenue fund might be paying the entire bill for that. So we will reimburse the water fund from the general fund because they paid for all of it instead of just their 1/3. So sometimes you'll see transactions by checks and things like that that are going back and forth between the two entities. They will always say reimbursement for this period of time, so that it's very clear that this is something that is a shared expense. Any questions about that? Yes, sir.
2 questions about the cell tower revenue. Do we notify the Bolivar ratepayers that we have done that if we are giving them that revenue?
Well, we've only done it in this past fiscal year. We did not do that. Yeah, just kind
And
of.
the reason I say that is because, you know, I've been sitting in that office 2 years, so now I can watch things and I hear a lot of things going on. Wasn't part of the machine, so there's a ton of resentment against Parkersburg and the water department because of the bills. Just a fact. And the fact is that if we would share that information, that might defray some of that resentment. I think we've had a lack of transparency. You have done great things in this council over the years, but it does not get communicated. And that's something that I want to see happen all the time in the council. But this particularly to Bolivar residents, maybe there's a note put in the billing to the ratepayers outside of Parkersburg.
Yeah, it's a little off topic, but I think you're on to something. I think if it were part of, this is what the Waterworks has been doing for you, and it's not just saying Harper's Ferry did this money, but along with a couple other things, people understand what goes into it.
Well, they need to know that, you know, the rates are this much, and they just lambast us. And I'm just saying, hey, did you know that we're sharing the town, our revenue with you, with you as a ratepayer? They need to know that. I mean, not from a legal standpoint, just to smooth things out. And I'm not saying to do it right now as a motion or anything.
I think it's a good point, and I think we should probably bring that up at the Water Commission. A bigger one, and it was a one-time thing, was the pandemic.
Yeah.
What do they call the funds that we spent all of them?
All that $120,000. Yeah, to build that pipeline underneath the road.
Well, we've got the water meter project coming up, and there might be some great opportunities as we publish about that to include this information. Yep.
Yeah, and spending the time, mostly our finance officer put it together. But yeah, that's a good thing that we should do.
And nobody's watching this meeting. You think anybody in Bolivar is watching this meeting? They don't know. So we have to.
Did you have another question?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought it was your. I thought you
That
said-
was my.
Okay, I thought you said you had 2 questions.
So when we share, it's double counting. There's effectively a zero balance on either side of that equation, even if it comes from the public utility fund that goes into the police department, and then the police department reimburses that. This whole thing is ultimately, it's a closed loop, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have to be, because otherwise,
Right.
still owe people money. If we not, you know, it's not. Are. Basically, we receive revenue from taxes and assessments, fees and services, federal, state grants, rents, interest, refunds and rebates, contributions from other entities, miscellaneous. So Going back to taxes and assessments, our property tax, our animal control tax is collected by the county. The state collects and remits to us oil and gas severance, excise on utilities, IRP fees, liquor and wine tax, municipal state tax, and all the lottery and gaming. And then we collect, and Patty's office over there does a great job of bird dogging this, the B&O tax and the room occupancy tax, and keeping our businesses compliant with their licenses, which comes in under fees and light services, building permits, BZA fees, parking permits, franchise fees. Actually, that it comes in from the state. No, it doesn't. Oh, my mistake. No, it doesn't. It comes in by check. Fines, fees, and court costs, parking revenue, and parking tickets. Federal and state grants, they come and they go. Rents is for the cell towers as well as the post office. We have a lease with the post office. Interest comes from all of our banking accounts, and we have 2 CDs, so from there as well. Refunds and rebates, that's based on the rebates come from the purchase card that we use as employees to make purchases that's involved in a rebate program that the state operates. And so every quarter we get a rebate contribution that's delivered from the state for the, based on the amount of purchase that we make in a given quarter. That's about maybe $300 a quarter. Contributions from other entities, this is a little bit of a quirky one. For us, this is primarily the $80,000 that we receive annually from the National Park Service for give me the proper wording, Mr. Mayor,
It's an impact fee.
for our
The
local law
impact
enforcement.
of the town having to absorb a park and all of the things that go on in the park, and those are added responsibilities on the municipality. So the U.S. government provides monies to settle the impact of federal employees and federal operations in a municipal government.
I guess, for instance, the trash, they don't have any trash receptacles, so it ends up, we have way more trash than we should.
Well, I think it's primarily law enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Mainly law enforcement.
you could say
Well, we do way more trash than we should.
we do.
And several like there on revenues, one thing that doesn't show is scale of revenues. And I have charts that I haven't done fiscal year 25 yet because we don't have, those aren't settled or recently settled. So in terms of all the revenues that come in, 26% come in from our 1% tax. That's the home rule tax.
Yes, municipal tax right there.
Yes. Then 21% comes, or in fiscal year 24, came from parking meters. 17% came from business and occupancy. And then there was 8% apiece from property tax and from town services. And I've forgotten what I bundled under town services. Once you get out,
That's probably permits and
yes. And then 6% comes from the hotel tax, which can only be spent for a limited number of things. And everything else is 5% or
what was
less.
B&O tax?
B&O I had as 17% of all revenues.
For the monies collected by the state and the county, how often are those dispersed to us?
So the property tax is monthly. We get a check every month from the sheriff's office. Animal control tax fluctuates, and it's extremely nominal amount of money. Some of these items are monthly, some are weekly. The money that we get as a result of the Charlestown racetrack activity comes weekly, but only after a certain amount of money is given to the state in the beginning of the fiscal year. So for the first several weeks of the beginning of the year, and that will fluctuate, all of the monies that collects goes right to the state. Then once they reach that plateau, then they start distributing it to all the municipalities in the share that's provided. So this is weekly, this is quarterly, municipal tax is quarterly, liquor and wine is quarterly, IRP is about once a month, excise on utilities comes on the same distribution with IRP. That's about once a month. Oil and gas is like once or twice a year.
So what is the for the county and the state collected monies, what percentage of that is, or do we depend on for cash flow? Or how much of our cash flow do those things
Oh,
comprise?
yeah, that was the percentages I was reading on.
Okay.
I can send you, some graphs, or I should probably update with fiscal
Yeah,
'25.
once we get, we're just starting to completely finalize fiscal 25. But yeah, once he gets, you'll see that a lot in budget and finance as we start reviewing. Yeah. Mhm.
I also wondered about the property tax. Is that set, is our percentage of the property tax that we get, is that set by the county, or do we have control over that?
So we have some control over it. When we get a little bit further on here, we talked about laying the levy. We have a little bit of control in there. But once, if you want to go beyond a certain amount that the state auditor's office has calculated for you, if you want to go beyond a certain amount, then you're required to have a hearing. If you want to go under a certain amount, you're required to have a hearing. So there are parameters on that. They say, okay, you can fall in here, you can move around a little bit, but once you start asking for more, then you're asking for an additional levy on your citizens. And so your citizens have a right then to, they have to actually have a bigger public hearing than what we have for laying the levy. It's a very big process.
And there's also non-residents pay more. So I wish we could raise that.
It's determined by the county based on the type of property that is assessed. Businesses pay more, residentials pay more, and less, that pay like half of businesses. And then out of town people are different as well. So, but those parameters are set by the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could we visit with them? I'd like to do something about the out of town people.
Well, that all has to do with the county laws and the state laws. I don't know how that is legislated.
Yeah, that's something for future discussion.
Yeah.
But I want to talk sometime about how we could maybe use some breaks on property tax and for some incentives.
Okay.
What flexibility we have, and
Okay.
so
All right. Well, let's look at that in budget and finance sometime.
that'll be future
Okay.
future
All right.
discussions.
Okay. So all of this money now, then we put it into four major categories in our budget. And those are, if you recall, and we're going to get into it when we get to the yellow folder. Jesse, I don't know if you were able to watch the meeting online last time, but I set aside the first four categories on the general fund income because they're kind of like reserves, right? And we have these different categories that are assigned to our reserves. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you, it's going to sound really nebulous until we get into the yellow folder to be like, oh, here's where it fits. We might have to go back and forth. So just kind of bear with me as we move through this. The first type of a reserve is a restricted reserve. That means that there are constraints that are placed on this money that is imposed by an outside agency, law, or government, or is imposed by law. So an example of that is your hotel motel tax, right? We are only allowed to pay that, use that money for certain purposes as laid out by the state law that governs room occupancy tax, and we have to give half of that income to the CVB, and the other half we're allowed to use under purposes that fall in the spending expense item of 906 Arts and Humanities Historic Preservation. We can't just decide to spend it on the water bill here in Town Hall. So that is a restricted use. A committed use is one that the town has decided to proceed with a specific contract for something that's going to occur within that time period. So let's say I don't know, we decided we were gonna renovate this bathroom here because it was malfunctioning. We've hired the contractor. We're gonna put $30,000 aside to get that bathroom renovated in this fiscal year. So when we prepared this budget, we're gonna put $30,000 in there so that it makes it clear that we can't just go ahead and spend it for the utility bill. Assigned is one that the council is intending that they would like to start setting aside, or they would like to use for a specific purpose, but they haven't really engaged in a contract, or they haven't 100% committed to it. So one of the things that you all, this council, previously council, put into assigned in this fiscal year that we're coming into was, let's say, the paving. It was agreed that they would like to have seen something done on paving. So part of, and you will see this when we get to the yellow folder, part of the assigned balance includes $34,000 towards paving. Unassigned is everything else in our carry forward money that's left over from last year that is not restricted. And then we also have a little special area called escrow holding. We can't use for anything. We have about, you'll see it again when we get to the yellow folder, we have about $250-some thousand of escrow holdings that are held from the Swan Street negotiation and purchase. And that has, once whatever limitations have been met on that, then that will be freed up to do if there were any intended purposes about it, which I can't recall right now. If it was, supposed to be for a certain thing, then that money will go into either committed or assigned, or it will go into unassigned. Yes, sir.
Where does interest from those go?
Yeah, good question. It's not listed on here, but it is part of what is collected by us from our bank, and it doesn't go to any specific one of these. It's just going to fall in that unassigned general fund. Yep. All right, so let's talk about the expenses. We take all of our expenses and we categorize them into these bullets. All these bullets that you see are bullets that are lines that the state auditor's office recognizes as municipal appropriate expense lines. So we try to take all of our expenses, and they might be various little things, like in City Hall, we have payroll, which also includes payroll tax, it includes health insurance, it includes retirement, and we make a whole big list of those things, and it goes under one bullet called City Hall. So all of these, and all that the state auditor's office cares about when they look at our budget is how much money do we have assigned to City Hall. Okay, so when we look into the yellow folder and we start looking at our budget in detail, you'll see that some of those items have yellow bars through them. They have yellow bars through them because those are the numbers that the state auditor's office is looking for in that category. They don't want to see how much money did we spend on accounting services. They want to see how much money did we spend on City Hall. Some of these are bigger and singular: economic development, Region 9, we pay them a flat fee once a year. Fire department, donation, library, and some of them have some detail underneath them. So we've got Parks and Rec, the Planning Commission, Historic Landmarks, Board of Zoning, parking, that's the parking services that are provided to collect tickets, and the internet, that's the internet connection for the iPads that are used, mileage, the police department and all the various items they need to run, the street department and all the various items that are needed to run that, which does include the tree commission under it now, litigation reserve, office of attorney, snow removal, street signs, street lights, mayor, council recorder, finance office, and clerk. And then we have some other large categories. These categories are defined as capital expenditure categories and they're designated for general government, public safety, streets and transportation, and contingency. I'm going to address all these together. And again, when you look at the yellow folder and go through that, you're going to see where they sit. I just want to make a comment that we've been talking a little bit about in budget and finance, but I want to start talking about it here because I really think this is something that's going to come forward and benefit the town, and this council, I think, if we get the timing right, will be instrumental in that. these are intended as capital expenditure accounts. So again, when we get to the yellow folder, you're going to see that in, let's say, the assigned fund category, there are several items under streets and transportation budget line that we've designated some monies in assigned for sidewalk maintenance or paving the streets, right? So those are big enough, they're over $10,000. So we're going to put that in a capital expenditure area of the budget. We do the same thing for public safety. This is where we put monies that we're either setting aside or intending to purchase for police vehicles or big equipment purchases. In general government, we tend to kind of put a lot of money in there that isn't really always intended for capital expenses. When I go to the state auditor training, I hear a lot about rainy day fund, and people have always talked to me about rainy day fund, but I've never gotten any training out of the state auditor's office about what does that really all mean, how do we do it, when can we do it, what's required. It seems to me that, and I've asked them to provide some training, and they have said that in the next session that they will do so. So I intend to go and learn about it, and then I will tell you. But what I think may end up happening is that we may be able to set aside, in addition to our contingency, a rainy day fund. I've learned a little bit about it, but I don't want to speak to the details because I don't want to inform you incorrectly. But I think that may be a better place for us to put some of this extra cash that we're holding for operational reserve and make this more designated to actual government capital expenditures. And that might make our numbers all look a little clearer to all of us, and not be so much, what's really in that number kind of.
Well, yeah, just the capital operating expenses
Right.
and then this more nebulous rainy day.
Right. So I just want to kind of let you know what we're thinking about there. We do have a contingency fund. It cannot be any more than 10% of the total budget. And we used to, when we would have overages or underage, we would sort of like split it between, balancing it out between contingency and general government. We're trying now to just make that fluctuation more part of the contingency number rather than the budget line for general government. But anyway, it's just a trend that we've been doing lately. Okay, any questions on the expenses or the revenues anymore?
Yeah, just one, Debbie, just for everybody, refresher, I think. During the council meeting, we will hear Storm say, there'll be $2,000 coming out of 901 or 842 or something like that. And so I guess, Debbie, where does Storm come up with that, and what does that mean, and how did he come up with coming out of this or coming out of that fund?
Oh, well, I haven't come up with it. That's our chart of accounts.
So again, that's going to be a lot more, the detail of that's going to be a lot more clear when we get to the yellow folder. All those numbers will line up with these descriptions here. And it's basically an accounting code that's generated by, number one, the state auditor's office. So everything that's associated with historic landmarks has a number that all municipalities use to reference historic landmarks. And then we, along with, of course, just common sense and some constraints by the state, decide what goes into that historic landmarks spending account. And when he says, okay, we're going to spend $400 out of historic landmarks, then it's our job to make sure that there's $400 in there to spend and that it's a legitimate expense against that budgeted amount of money.
Right. You may have said this, but I missed it. If you did, clarify that 10% limit on contingency is, if we're putting money into contingency, there's a pool there. Are we talking about 10% of the annual budget? And could the pool get bigger than that?
Okay, so if your budget is $2.5 million, including all your reserves, then the maximum that your contingency can be is $250,000. So that kind of, what you're alluding to is sort of what I'm talking about with the rainy day fund. A rainy day fund would be something different. So if we felt like, okay, we had enough that we had $250,000 on our contingency, and we'd like to kind of set aside even more just for an operational reserve, I'm thinking that the rainy day fund may be something that we could
I got
Right.
it. Okay, thank you.
Again, don't quote me. I am a guinea pig on this. I will just be learning about it, but that's sort of talking with Charlie about it a little bit, our accountant. I kind of feel like that's sort of what
Okay.
the direction we may be able to go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the budget process. We operate on a government fiscal year. Our fiscal year begins July 1 of any given year and ends on June 30. We define the fiscal year by the last date. So when the fiscal year ends. So our fiscal year has now begun, 2025, July 1. It will end June 30, 2026. So we are in fiscal year 26. So our funding timeline, because we start in the middle of the year, actually starts at the end of the year, in December or January. Verlissa helps me send out emails to internal and external departments and funding and entities that are interested in possibly getting funding from the town, obtaining funding for various reasons. They are required to return to us their request, and inside of our this is my binder for fiscal 26. We have not even begun this year. It's almost full. So just for, I know a lot of you have already seen this, but just for Jesse's awareness, this whole section is all of the funding requests that we received for fiscal 26. Every one of these was reviewed by the entire town council. Every agency was required to come here and present their request and make and we take questions on it. And then the council, or budget and finance, whatever process this body chooses to go through, they meet in February and they ask these questions, and then they incorporate that information into the formulation of the budget and how much they think that they can allow for this spending and whether it's legitimate or not, things like that.
And that has been a heavy lift for budget and finance in January, February, preparing that for Deb. And last fiscal year, the entire town council got involved with it as well.
In March,
Very time.
the county assessor's office provides us with the property values and circulates the levy rates. And so the levy is what is the amount of money that we are having our citizens provide for their property. So what you're really doing when you're setting your budget is not only deciding how much money you think you're gonna bring in and how much money you think you're gonna spend, but you're also setting that levy rate to be associated with the property tax that's collected. And that is why when in March, we develop the budget that's going to go to the state auditor's office, we call it a levy estimate. Because you're establishing the rate and you're saying, we believe that this is the amount of property tax and the percentage that we're going to collect. And for us, it's not a huge amount of our budget. Our budget is like $2.5 million. That property tax is under $90,000, okay? But for some municipalities many municipalities in this state, that's a huge portion of their property, of their budget. So, I mean, it's important anywhere, but yeah, just to kind of keep it in perspective. So you adopt the levy estimate, which is the whole budget based on that property tax number and everything else that you know, and then by the end of March, the council will meet and approve the levy estimate, which is the budget, and it gets sent down to the state auditor's office, and we put it in the newspaper for 2 weeks. Then, every single municipality in the state of West Virginia must meet on third Tuesday of every April in order to lay the levy. So by now, what will have happened is I will have sent the budget to the state auditor's office. The state auditor's office will review it. They will let us know if there's any grave errors or issues that they see, or, you know, if everything looks in order. They will send it back approved, or they will tell us if there's an issue and we'll fix it. And then with any of those changes, the final levy estimate will be, ordered, and you will have laid the levy, and I have to send that then to the state auditor's office within 3 days, and that then circulates back to the state, to the county, so that the county can incorporate the property tax rate, the levy, into the tax bills that you will start receiving. Okay, so that's kind of how that whole circle works and why we are confined to this timeline. Then after that, and we're allowed to make budget revisions throughout the year, but the last time in the year that we can revise the current fiscal year budget is June 15th. The fiscal year closes on June 30th. The new fiscal year opens July 1. We are required by state law to revise the coal severance budget on July 15th, and then by July 30th, the new a revision to the current year general fund. And what we're doing in both of these cases is we're saying, okay, well, we did this estimate back in March, and things have happened now between March and July. And one of them for this year was really significant, was we moved that cell tower money. That was $66,000, right? So you didn't think that was going to happen in March. So the money that you have sitting in your bank account isn't the same as what you thought it was. So the money that you thought you were going to carry forward into this fiscal year is now not the same. So you have to adjust that carry forward balance. And that's the main goal of this first fiscal year revision. Now, other things can happen too, but that's really what, and then if that throws out a kilter, what your expenses are, then you have to make adjustments to those expenses, right? So you'll see, we're gonna do this today, but so that you understand this first revision, the primary reason is to adjust these carry forward balances. Okay, yeah.
That's correct, but this one is mandated by the state. You must do this because pretty much there's always a change, but then the ones that we do throughout the year is based on if there's a material change to our finances.
That's right. And when we do those ones throughout the year, we do not mess around with those fund balances. They stay solid. So we can't say, oh, we just want to change that. We thought we were going to have $100,000, but we only have 85. We can't do that. So the ones that are done from here on will only affect income and expenses. All right. In July, I send to the state and the federal government, state auditors' offices, expenditure schedules that have to do with how much money we have received in the fiscal year that has just passed that comes from any federal or state funding sources. So any grants, any loans, things like that, I have to report. The purpose of that is to establish the type of audit that we will need for the fiscal year that has just passed us. If we have received in excess of $750,000 in federal money, we will have to participate in what is called a single audit, which is more intensive than a standard audit. And when you have a single audit, the deadline for that is March 30. It most often cannot waver from that date, and really shouldn't, especially if you have ongoing federal or state funding that you want to have in the next fiscal years. And the other one can move around a little bit, isn't quite as, and I was very happy that last year I didn't have a single audit.
Yeah, good problem to have.
It was a good problem.
A lot of money, from the federal government.
Okay. Any questions on the timeline? All right. Controls and oversight. So a lot of people say, how do we watch all this? What do we do? We have external and we have internal controls. External, state auditor's office. They provide training to us every time we make an adjustment to our budgets. We have to report that to them. They approve it. They are available for consultation. If we have questions or whatever about a certain way to spend or use money or a procedural, they're always available to us and are very easy to work with. We have our accounting contractor, Cox Holiday Young. They provide consultation to us. They help us with maintaining GAAP compliance. That's, generally accepted accounting practices. They do perform our monthly bank reconciliations. I do not do that. I send the bank statements to them, and they have a staff accountant who does the reconciliation. Now, they send me all the things that might not match up, and I have to fix them or adjust them, or, we got to sort them out. But I don't do that, and that is to protect you and me so that I'm not doing everything. They also prepare all of our financial reports. So the reports that you get at town council meetings have been prepared by them. They assist me in the preparation of the budget. Whenever we do a budget revision, Charlie, when I finish with it and I feel like I'm ready to roll, Charlie and I have a virtual call. And sometimes that's why it's maybe not getting to you right with the agenda or something like that, because like in this case, yesterday afternoon was when I was able to do this with her for this revision that you have. I do my best to get it to you as far in advance as possible. And usually it goes through budget and finance first anyway. So by the time it gets to council, it's usually done its work. But anyway, it's a scheduling kind of thing. And they provide backup. I will be going on vacation in September for 2 weeks. You will not see me. Charlie will come in. Charlie will cut checks. We'll make deposits. We will help with payroll. So we do that kind of backup that provides what's called segregation of duties. Auditor, we have our auditor who comes in and helps us to make sure that we are compliant with GAAP, meeting our budget requirements, making sure that we're following good processes and practices. And they also do intensive checks on our retirement and health insurance contributions that we make to make sure that they are in compliance with, what is needed. Internally, town council, you review the budgets monthly at your council meetings. You set expenditure limits and processes. We're going to get into that in the green folder. You approve the annual budget. 2 people are required to sign checks, and 1 person is required to sign the bill, approve the bill on every expenditure that happens. So there is oversight there. When you're signing that check, you're responsible to know what it is that you're signing for. If you have questions about it, you're responsible to ask. If you don't understand it, if you think my math is wrong, y'all need to bring that up. Chris is my #1 bird dog on my math over there. So he catches me. Budget and finance does in-depth review and makes recommendations to council because they're responsible for really getting into the weeds on what is going on with the budget and where. And that has to do, and they make not only on the budgets recommendations and expenditures, but when we get into bidding and procurement and purchasing, they have been excellent leaders and provided a tremendous wisdom in helping us build a robust but user-friendly bidding and procurement process. And internally, we work very closely, all the gals here in the office, to give each other as much segregation of duty across the staff as possible. So, for instance, Kathy is responsible for a cash drawer out there with the water department. And every day she comes in and she has to count that money. She has a log. Every day she fills out how much money she counted. Any money that's brought in, you're required to write down how much you put in, blah, 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 blah. Gets counted at the end of the day. Every once in a while, she's out of town. So Melissa and I take a note, or maybe Patty will count the drawer. Every once in a while, I'll walk up to her and say, hey, you look a little busy. I'll count the drawer for you today. And she knows it's just a friendly check and balance, but it's just a way that, somebody else is checking on it every once in a while, and we're all helping each other out. I do not, unless I'm the only person here, I do not write the receipts or the checks when they come in the door. Every check that comes in the door gets a receipt. I'll do that because I'm going to be depositing it. So I want somebody else to receive that and put their initials on that. I don't sign checks. You all sign the checks. I cut the checks. So that's a 4th set of eyes now on that money. So we do a lot of that. And when you're in a small government like we are, this is the #1 thing in auditing that can kind of get you dinged. But we've done a good job there, I believe. Expenditure approvals. Again, we're going to just in a minute get into that purchasing procurement process. And then I'm here to provide whatever advice I can. Budget revisions. Okay, we talked about the one state mandated one. The other reason that we provide a budget revision is to make adjustments to revenues and expenses to more accurately reflect current known circumstances. So if things change throughout the year, then, we will, essentially that's driven by expenses because we want to try to make sure that we're not overspending from our budget, but also income. If all of a sudden, we receive, well, actually this has happened to us in the past years. Like if we all of a sudden receive an opioid settlement contribution, we're not getting any foresight of that. It appears on our doorstep. Well, we have to revise the budget because that's money that we brought in and we didn't say we were going to. So those are, sometimes it's income driven, mostly it's expense changes. And the other thing that can happen is I do make mistakes. And I'm a human, and you will see there are lots of spreadsheets and lots of cells, and it can get a little topsy-turvy occasionally. So sometimes I might have made an error. We might need to correct that. Overall, the principle that we use is conservative budgeting, which means that we, to the best of our ability, underestimate income and overestimate expenses, so that as we move through the year, the divide between those things starts to get closer and closer and closer. And I think those who have been serving over the last several administrations will be able to attest to the fact that we have done a pretty good job of landing that plane pretty much on the platform where we projected.
Are the overages and underages, are those a set percentage, or we just kind of figure it out?
It's not a simple percentage. It's really philosophical, and for instance, it's based on the temper of the council. So when the last budget for fiscal 26 was brought forth, there was tremendous concern about what was going to happen in various aspects of our economy due to what was going on in Washington, D.C. and still is going on in Washington, D.C. And so we made many pullbacks in income, saying we want to underestimate this income until we can see what's going on. We were in March and it was just going wild then. Now we have a little bit better understanding, so you'll see some of that loosening up based on past year trends. And then also with expenses, especially in the area of the funding that was approved for all these agencies from the outside, almost half of what was asked for is what was provisionally approved.
Which was a little unusual.
Which was pretty unusual.
And I also say, like most of it, like without the extraordinary things that can happen, Deb will look at, okay, we know for the past 3 years, this is what parking revenue is, and to peg it somewhere below that. That way, more often than not, you're surprised to have a little extra.
You'll see that a little bit when we get to the yellow folder, and then also as you work through your first budget revision, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I get it now. Yeah.
But I think what it's meant for budget and finance and the council in general is that there aren't very many 3-alarm fires,
Right.
We're kind of in a comfortable position. Because we have that conservative outlook at the beginning.
That's right.
The 3-alarm fires are reserved for waterworks.
Right. Well, and to your point, so, we had hoped that cash flow situation would not have materialized in the way it did, but because we were conservative in our income, by the time we got to April, May this year, we had, and you'll see when we get into the revision, our surplus was great. And so we were able to say, okay, we can give this money up. It's going to be a little pinch for us, but we can do that, and that will prevent a rate increase, and it will just help them through this cash flow time. The other thing that we do is we do get a number on how many months, weeks, days we have an operational reserve. And sometimes we can set that as a target and say, well, in fact, this past council, after we got through hashing out the budget, well, then it was just like a whole pile of principles, which I did not have time to sit there and plug into a spreadsheet and balance out in that moment. So I was kind of given this overall mandate to say, okay, these are the specifics that we want. And aside from that, make it balanced, but we also want to hold X amount in operational reserve. Okay, anything on purple folder?
No,
Alright, okay. I'm gonna pop off of the screen for a minute and let's just pick up the green folder. Does everybody have a green folder? That light point there. Okay, on the agenda, one of the things to approve is the discussion action regarding fiscal 26 purchasing threshold guidelines. In the green folder on your left is the document that you'll be looking to approve. You don't need to approve it right now. You can do that when we get to after we do the budget revision. But it does kind of work in tandem with this green folder. So I just want to draw your attention to it at this time. I'm not going to get into detail until we kind of just go through a highlight of the purpose of this folder. So in 2023, I think even before then, maybe 21, Budget and Finance and I worked really closely together to try to develop purchasing guidelines for our office, and particularly as they had to do with bids, because we were seeing that coming down the pike, we were going to have to oversee the bidding process for a lot of big projects, particularly in the water department, millions of dollars, and we wanted to have a good process for understanding how to handle bids. And also, we occasionally run into situations where we're faced with a project that might be $5,000, $10,000, has to do with the general fund. Provide guidance to our employees what to do when you're faced with a purchase that might be, $2,000. Do I need to bid that? How do I do it? What do I do with it? So, okay. The second is how we do it, tax, P-card, all that kind of stuff, ACHs. And then it kind of lays out in pros the bidding process. And it talks a little bit about spending money that is paid to outside organizations. The next pages are close. Or an employee or someone. And the first direct you to various components to do with procurement level. So if you have a certain amount of money, up to $2,500, you're going to use process level A, level B, $2,500, level C, $5,000, and then the final level B is over $5,000. These are models that are the state, so pick these levels based on the state's procurement and bid system. And behind that then tells you how to make an award for a bid. If you are the employee collecting up the bids, this guides you through how to do that. If you end up having, if there's an emergency purchase, let's say a police car needs an immediate repair, it's completely dysfunctional and we cannot provide public service, that would be an emergency. Just let's say we have a giant snowstorm and our budgeted amount of money for snow removal is just about to max and it's March and we got slayed. So again, that's an emergency purchase. The HVAC in this building, we get a quote, and what we need, depending on when the next budget meeting or the next council meeting might be, the mayor might need to authorize purchase. There are what it is, what is an emergency condition, what isn't an emergency condition, how you are if you go out and bid on 5,000, you bids that come in and they're exactly the same. There's no bid, what you do. I bid, rest of it. You do if you feel like you need to award someone other than the lowest bidder. that. Don't get 3 bids. And what if there's a problem in someone's bid when they provide it to you, a bid error resolution? All of that is provided in here. The front page, employed, right? That you need to use. It just tells you. Just understanding how many bids you need. That's usually the immediate question. I need to obtain bids. How many do I need to get? Can they be verbal? What do I need to do? And that's kind of usually the instant worry. So you have this quick reference that tells you kind of what you're going to need to do, and then you have this complete reference to guide you. Now, everyday expenses that we experience, like utilities, office supplies, help me out, other little things.
Oh,
The phone is
yeah.
utility.
Right.
Mostly
Dumpsters.
dumpsters are people, contractors who we are working with on a daily basis, like our accountants and our lawyers. Okay, accountants, let's say, you'll see when we go through the budget, there's a line in our budgets that is specifically designated to the accounting firms, and we know, okay, that's we've allocated $14,000 a year for the accounting services. So if we divide that by 12, we can say, all right, this, either the general fund or the water, should be not spending more than X number of dollars in a given month in order to be assured that we don't overspend the 14,000. So since we know that we have that parameter already laid out very specifically in the budget, this chart allows us to say, all right, if we get a bill in and it's, let's say that I'm not going to do the math on that, but let's say we approve $1,000 a month for the accounting services. If the total bills that have come in for that accountant are $1,000 or less, then we don't need to take that to council to approve because we know it's keeping us within our budget. Okay. Same thing with things like telephone bill, copier lease. Those are things that are on contract. Those numbers are pretty specific and they're fed into they're sitting in our budget. Fuel for our vehicles is something that if we do not pay that bill like immediately, they put all kinds of penalties on us and all that kind of business. So again, we have a vehicle for which we'd like, okay, we've said that we're going to spend X number in a month. So as long as it's underneath that, you all are authorizing me to set up an ACH payment on that so we don't get slapped with these fees. Same thing with power bills, all that kind of stuff. So this chart enables me to follow a set of guidelines that you are setting based on what's built into the budget and the contracts that we have for these various utilities and services, and gives you the assurance that we're not overspending in those categories that would cause us to go over our budget, and allows me to move that through without all kinds of holdups, and taking them back to council. Because let's say outside of this, like what other expenses would we have? All right, let's say we had a problem with this HVAC system and we had to call in, that's not a great example. Let's say that we have extensive fees from our water utility attorney. Maybe there's an ongoing thing that's just popped up and we've had to work with him. And on this, it's $750 a month. But now I've got a bill for $2,000 for a single month. That bill comes to council and it goes on that list of purchases to be approved for the month. And the reason it's on there is because it's exceeded this chart somehow, or it doesn't live on this chart. Right, so snow removal doesn't live on this chart. All those bills, they come here. Those vendors, they're like, where's our money, where's our money? I'm like, it's gotta go to council. Most of them are extremely understanding and they don't mess up our terms, but, and most of the time with those kind of things, you're not working with a machine, like your gas bill, you know, that you're automatically dinged off. So they understand, yep.
An additional thing, and also remember that even though these are basically pre-approved because they're known expenses, we still have 3 sets of eyes that are looking at these expenses as they flow through,
Right.
approving and signing the checks.
And if you are one of those people who's assigned to that, so Jesse, right now, you're not assigned to be a bill approval or a check signer. But Storm goes out of town, since he's a check signer, I may say, Jesse, can you come and approve the bills? Okay, and I would help you with understanding how to do that. But you're always, if you ever want to look at the budget because you're not sure where we are, or if you're like, oh, is this really on here, or where, you know, I will always sit down with you and go through that so that you understand that. And anyone who is signing or is approving has the right to and should be assured that things are lining up right, and you're not signing something that doesn't fit the parameters. So this has been updated based on some contracts that have been revisited with our telephone and our internet in the last 2 months. So I've updated new numbers. I also put a little bit of a pad on it so that, like this first one that says we're moving it from 150 to 175. Okay, the monthly bill is really around 160. Putting that extra on there just in case I run into, you know, every once in a while I'll get to the end of the contract and then they'll up it and I missed that I had to renegotiate it. So that just kind of protects us a little bit. You'll notice that auto fuel in all 3 departments went down. So I think this was back even when Christian was on council last time. We were really experiencing high fuel costs, and we had to really bump that number up on a monthly basis. That has all settled out. So this is a much better number, and we're falling consistently underneath it.
I thought you were an electric car.
The electric on the general fund number is up because we have so many accounts on that one that are paying into that solar prepayment situation, and that really boosted that number. Propane went down. So, and I went through this pretty thoroughly the other day. We're gonna, the least container down at the water department is now gone, so we'll take that completely out. Any questions?
No, can we go ahead with this item?
Right, but let me also point out, the cell service in the parking lot, I have to admit to you that we just redid our contract with them and got new devices, and their billing system is really, really squirrely. Right now, our bill looks a little squirrely, and I really need to dig into that and figure out what is going on there. So that's why I had that highlighted. I was hoping to get to that before this meeting. I did not. So I'm not sure if that's going to change after this, but if it does, it'll come back and it'll just be that'll be the only thing changed.
Are these the devices that the parking folks are using to issue tickets and so what?
Not to issue tickets, but to connect with Park Mobile and see if someone has paid.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whether he's gonna get a ticket.
Right.
Right. Okay.
All right, then I move to adjust the purchasing thresholds as submitted.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
All right.
Debbie, I wonder if it would not be helpful, real quick, to give particularly Jesse an idea, a real life situation that we dealt with 2 years ago and how it unfolded and how you wound it into making everything happen with Green Ridge. When we had the major break under 340, and it was in excess of $30-some thousand, and what we were dealing with and what you were doing behind the scenes to get that thing moving so that, and we were 20 feet below 340, dug down, that whole thing. How did that unfold? How, from your perspective?
That was before, that's what caused us to
Yeah.
create the,
Yeah.
Okay. So, relates to this yellow folder. That was a massive print, but the main underneath report was
Huge.
huge, this big around, and it was spewing water on the other side. There is no way, guys, to touch it. And we had Green Ridge for some maintenance of mains work, and what we were doing each time was finding out how much it was going to cost, bringing it to budget. They would execute the work. So you'll see later we're going to approve tree removal or trimming or something like that. So this is that's an example of that. Okay, it's not really specifically part of the budget, but you're approving an expense beyond $1,000. If it was under $1,000, I would have said to Patty, just go with it because we have that in the budget. Okay. So it's going to be in excess of $30,000.
It's also an emergency.
Yes, and that's an important distinction.
So that's true. And yes, water was out of control. Our tanks were launched, right? So that we saw it coming, and it's causing we're endangering people down the hill. We're endangering our water system. So the mayor, so we got hold of Green Ridge. They came immediately. They gave us a rough idea of how much it was going to cost. When we get into the yellow folder, you're going to find out a reserve account that we are required to contribute to every month called Renew and Replace. I'm going to report to you in that folder how much we have in that right now. And from this incident, we also have periodic reporting about what's going on with that account in a fiscal year based on maintenance of mains works that we've had to contract to our vendor. But I reported to the mayor how much money was in there. It was like $120,000, $130,000 at the time. And he then sent an email out to council and said, I'm authorizing Green Ridge contractors. Well, he explained what the problem was and the danger that we were in. And he sent out the email and said, I'm authorizing Green Ridge to immediately begin working on this. This will cost us in excess of X. We're going to use a Renew and Replacement fund for this, which lives outside of our operational budget. And I'm advising you that I'm doing this. Then the work began and was completed, and we got the bill. And when the bill came in, Bill came back to the table on that list in the next council meeting. That was the invoices to be approved, so that you could see that his estimate was relatively where it was. You were aware of what's going on. You could see it was going out on the right check, not out of the operations account. You put that in the bank account. And you can review the invoice if you want and make sure that that's really all they did, and they didn't tap on some little widget over here. So he needs to keep us moving, right? We couldn't have called a town council meeting that week, 3 days notice. We would have killed us.
That said, like customarily, he will consult with budget and finance or a member thereof, just to make sure there's some outside accountability as well.
Right.
This was around 11 o'clock at night too.
Yeah, it was late. Yeah.
Well, don't call me. And the money that came out of the Renew and Replace fund, how is that recharged?
Yeah. So I'm going to get there. Does anyone take a break before we get into the yellow?
Yeah. Yes, and just a quick word about emergencies. It's clear when there's a true emergency, but emergency isn't something that happened because, let's say you forgot to pay a bill and suddenly that vendor's come a-calling. That's not an emergency. You can't approve something on that basis. It has to be that water is springing, something is on fire, someone's life is in danger. That's an emergency.
Your failure to plan is not correct.
Well, it could be.
Yes.
Right. And if we can, and so we really do had this way to the next council meeting. Should we call a special meeting? Really try to ask those questions so that as much as possible, we're following, getting it coming through here. But why don't we take a break, and that question is going to get answered in the yellow folder. Yeah.
And about the same time after we fixed it, we got another leak.
Yeah.
100 yards up the hill on Union.
Well, this is all-
a small one, but I mean,
This is all stopgap just because the system's so old.
Yeah.
We're hoping that once everything is blocked out, we won't have nearly the same need. There'll always be some.
I think
Okay, so I'm gonna, share a screen for this next part, as best I can. If it's getting cumbersome, let me know and I'll sit down at the table with you. Let's start with, the general fund. Let me get my screen shared. This is the report that you, right. This is an example of the kind of report that you get schools meeting. Okay. You'll see area. So we talk about our office of the mayor, litigation, economic development, planning commission, city hall, and you're going to see down here that they're just one number, right? There's not any detail behind it, okay? And that's that's why we call that a consolidated report. This was elected maybe 2 administrations ago. It is up to the office of the council whether they want to stay with that, or the other option would be if you move on to the next section. Is pages, and that has a more extended view of the monthly expenses.
Do you have a preference on which one of those?
The consolidated, I think it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, we could always add more detail.
Right, okay.
You can always add the detail, and if at any time you want it, and I'll say this particularly about these reports. If you're getting ready for a council meeting and you have a question about it, you don't understand something, you feel like you're gonna be asked to approve spending in an area, you don't understand what's going on, call me up, come over here, even if it's the day of the meeting, and let's talk about it. I've done it with many council people, that seems to work really well, rather than trying to sort it out at the table. You know, I mean, I obviously don't answer questions at the table, but usually it's just not the time to really get in depth.
Right.
Yeah. But if you look at this second report, you'll see, especially again in the expense area, okay, for like office of the mayor, okay, so what we've got in there are payroll taxes and the wage, right?
And Jesse, you're on budget and finance, so you can definitely ask.
Yeah, you're good.
By the time council, you'll.
Page 3, City Hall, you're gonna see, here's where we're tracking the payroll, processing of the audit costs, that, what we're paying for any kind of equipment or things that are needed to be leased in here, contracted services, maintenance on buildings and equipment, professional services, that's our, contract services is our accountant, professional services is our IT, and some other contract services, salaries and wages. And this, so like for this includes the salary of our office administrator and our OCO. It also includes half of the wages of our public works administrator. So you see the detail there. When you look at the one from in the front, you only see this big number 249. And that's telling you that your projected budget was 307, you're at 249. And that's the number that the state auditor's office is worried about. So that's why it was agreed that that was a simpler thing for those monthly meetings, letting the council know we're on track, we're off track, we're, you know, what direction we're moving in. But also not being overwhelmed. Yeah. Okay. So next page. Close this down. I don't need that anymore. Right, so when we are developing the budget, we take a look at our fund balances. And what we do in order to determine basically all of that we have, take every bank account that we have. So over here on the left hand side, these are the banks. A forfeiture bank account is used if there's ever any, there's a drug related arrest and there's money that needs to be forfeited, we are able to keep some of it and some of it goes to the state, and it has to belong in this account, and it can only be used for certain things by state mandate. So this is just, can't really see it at all, but you have the visual in front of you. That's how much is in our bank account as of 6:30, going all the way down, all these underlined things. West Virginia GoPay is not underlined. It should be. That is a bank account. That is the online payment services, that payment service that people can use to pay their B&O tax or pay for a building permit or a business license, or they can pay parking tickets or citations. Opioid settlement is its own thing. Okay, so that's how much money as of June 30th is in the general fund. We have a Silver Street account, which actually is an old grant that account really needs to just be rolled into the general fund. It is general fund money now. It's not designated for that grant anymore. We have 2 CDs. So altogether, all the grants that are eligible for any kind of spending are $1,212,000. If you look all the way down towards the bottom underneath the gray, you'll see this thing, Swan Escrow. That's that escrow account I was telling you about that's held in escrow as a liability until on our balance sheet until it's cleared of any contingency, and then its intended use will be incorporated into these other accounts as directed. Okay, so then once we get a balance in all those accounts, and we say, okay, well, how much is any of this bank account restricted? The drug forfeiture must be spent in certain ways that have to do with drug law enforcement. Hotel motel is restricted by state law, and the opioid settlement money is restricted by state law. So that means that total of $74,200 is going to go into our restricted fund for fiscal 26. Committed, is any of this money committed? Well, a very, very long time ago, this K9 account, we did have a K9 dog. There was money that was down into this. These are, and by the way, on budget and finance list, I would like to deal with these wild little, like,
the committed fund.
really not the committed fund, but these bank accounts that are kind of old and really need to be either dissolved or repurposed.
Yeah.
It's legacy entries.
Yeah, right. So this sits in there.
Yeah, we cleared some of them out, but
Yeah, but we need to do another overhaul. All right, so equipment replacement fund, that's another one that $15,000. We kind of, it really is general fund money, but it's been assigned for police equipment. There's a little bit of money in petty cash down in the police department. The general court fund, this is where all the monies that are collected for citations or tickets or anything like that goes into. 50,000 of that we assign just as an operational account there, which is really pretty hefty. I mean, it could be less than that. And then 195 of that really we're going to probably transfer out and put into the general fund, because all the monies that come in as tickets are general fund monies. The police department is not its own island of budget.
Including
Well, parking, actually, those get designated directly into general fund. They do not go into this account.
But that's, so parking fees and parking
Parking fees and
Tickets
parking tickets
are
are.
the same. Okay, okay. Right.
Okay, we talked about hotel motel, that's assigned. Payroll, it's an account that I just use when I have to make payments for health insurance and retirement. I pull it out of the water or the general fund and I put it into this payroll fund, and then I pull one payment from those agencies out of that payroll fund, so that it's very, I don't make a mistake. It's kind of just a place for movement of those funds. Parks and Rec, they have their own account. Opioid settlement has its own account. There's a little petty cash. Okay. Assigned fund, let me just go down here again. Okay, Parks and Rec, that's assigned to whatever Parks and Rec is doing. That's not money that the general fund can necessarily spend. Also in assigned fund, this past council wanted to designate $50,000 towards the moving towards the purchase of a police vehicle. And $80,000 is, let me get on the right button here, is for the High Street renovation match, 50,000 for the Armory Trail. Paving, we discussed, and 5,000 for street signs. So altogether, our assigned funds are 292,000. That means everything else falls in unassigned, which is 840,000. Now, a couple of details over here on the side. Parking revenue. So our legal counsel has explained to us that parking revenue that we receive for, not the tickets, but for the actual revenue, should be associated with expense items on the budget that have to do with the traveling public. Okay,
Road, sidewalks.
Signs.
police department, police vehicles, High Street renovation, stormwater and streetscape match, the operation of the parking department. So now I did not, you're gonna see, we've adjusted the parking revenue to 180, and I have not come back and circled back to fix that. But we originally thought it would be $200,000. So what we do is we go through the exercise of saying that $200,000 is distributed across these parts of our budget to fund those things. Yes, sir.
Who said that's where those funds?
It's our attorney.
Okay,
Mhm,
okay.
yeah. And it's based on state code, really, yeah. So that's just kind of what this does is, if this is information that I can provide the state auditor's office, if any citizen ever calls them and they say, well, why is this like this in the budget, or why is that like that, or they shouldn't be spending this and that, they will sometimes call me. There is information that I provide to them when I send the budgets in that helps support questions like that. And this is that check and balance that if someone has a question about how we're spending parking revenue, I can supply to them and show them that, yes, it is designated to fund these certain parts of our expenses, and that does have to do with the traveling public. In the general fund area where there's all those asterisks and things like that for various projects, I tried to keep rolling notes about what is going on with things that we have assigned funds or unassigned funds. Council has to decide what goes in this assigned fund area, and when the budgets are approved, they'll say, okay, but we're assigning $34,000 to paving, so that officially gets that in there. If you all decide that in the next iteration that you didn't spend it and you don't want to spend it, or you want to spend more, you will make a statement about that. If next year you decide we do not want to put any money into this High Street renovation, we're going to put that somewhere else, then you would unassign that from that. You would relieve that from that expenditure, and you would put it somewhere else.
And that's a lot of what we did when we were looking at the potential shortfall based on what was happening at the federal level, is we did adjust these numbers and eliminated some things. It's actually a good
So
opportunity.
you'll see these quarterly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters are all referencing things that have to do mostly with fiscal 26 adjustments. Certainty in planning the budget. Okay, so as we move through the year, and particularly towards next year, if this council's preference is to do something with these numbers. Now, because it's not there, doesn't mean you can't spend it. So if you decide, council decide that they want to spend $2,000 on that renovated space right here, the second bulleted item right here. If you decide in this year's budget that you have the money to do that, even though it's not sitting in the assigned fund, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. But it's not sitting in the assigned fund right now, so it doesn't prevent that $30,000 from being spent on something else.
Yeah, it's basically just if we feel something is important enough, we want to make sure that as the year goes along, we haven't spent on other things, and then it's time for this other project to go, and the funds aren't there. That's all.
And let's say that the and you're assured that you have it in your budget, and you would feel confident about releasing that money. So that's kind of the purpose of that. That makes sense. You were gonna ask them.
I had a question about the list of accounts above general fund. I have a vague memory of this, that there was or is a special account that historic landmarks had.
But it's in our account,
So it's totally separate.
theirs. We have nothing to do with it, except that it gets mailed to us.
Okay.
Okay. So as budget and finance and or town council develops the budget, which we're gonna look at next, this works in tandem with that. You have a plan for your year, right? Going to the next is gonna be the budget detail. All right. So when budget and finance sits down and begins to prepare, I take everything that's sitting in QuickBooks as actual monies, and I put it into this column of actual receipt. Now, typically what's gonna happen is you're not gonna be in a year that's just begun, right? You're gonna be revising revision 1 to revision 2. So I'm gonna put this actual column in between revision 1 and 7 we're gonna be, and here's what they're gonna have. Me weeks beforehand, just so you see what happened last year, because that's really what's more pertinent to planning this year. So in the actual column is the actual numbers that we believe have been received as of this time for all of these line items. That detailed QuickBooks report that I showed you, not the consolidated report. And we look at that versus what we had planned on, and then if there's anything that needs to be changed. So one of the big changes is up here in the top, you'll see that we dropped this unassigned balance. That is due to a couple of things. One is the $59,000 that we moved out of the budget because of the cell towers. Another is we were supposed to have gotten $14,000 from the federal government for the repayment of the Weaver Gillison project, and we were going to get that money, but we just haven't yet. And there's another. I dropped. If you go down to line 342, parking meter revenue. Not tracking nicely. I dropped that down to 180. So that's another 20. So you start adding on, and you're like pretty close to that 95,000. So when you think about that in terms of that was money that should have been there. Like we thought we were going to get $200,000 in parking meter revenue, but we only got 180. So that's 20,000 that would have carried forward, but it's not. 14,000 should have been there, but it's not. The 59,000 we took out, so it's not carrying forward. So that's why that carry forward number is dropping. And then if you take a look at B&O tax, we ended up at 244. So that's the line 305 B&O tax up towards the top. We ended up at 244 for the year. That is huge based on what we have been getting. And I'm not in the working Excel sheet on this, or I could give you some notes about that. And if you want to see it, I'll go back there.
Do we know what?
Well, it's also trending with, if you come down to sales tax. Oh, help me, please.
314. Yeah.
314. Yeah. But we thought we were going to have 250,000. I think we moved it up to 300, but at the end of the year, but we ended up at 323. So what's going on is the economy is, people are spending money. We get 1% B&O tax on people who do business in this town. And we get 1% municipal sales tax.
Like, even as we were saying, we have to hedge against things getting rough. The other side of that coin was the possibility, like during COVID, that people will decide to stay local rather than make a trip, and that could actually benefit our Berry.
So,
Possible.
I just want to know where this would go in a future discussion. Like, so you would kind of expect to see a rise in parking revenues, not a decline, with those, with the rise in those other two categories. So wherever that conversation about that discrepancy or potential discrepancy, that's the wrong word, but there's a.
No, it's not. There's no different.
We have, the parking has competition from the Park Service parking, from Oliver,
Right.
we have direct competition.
I was just, yeah, I get it.
So what Jesse's asking is, okay, he's seeing that ending the same way. So where in the life of town council does he have that conversation about why is that happening? Right. And it's something that like budget and finance might be confused about. So they would maybe send something over to the parking committee and say, hey, what do you think about this? Why is this happening? Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a sort of thing that is mentioned about the general fund, like anything is fair game with him.
Okay.
Okay. So any of the changes that get I can pull up the spreadsheet and I can give you history and that kind of stuff if you want to look at that.
Not I.
Get all the detail on it.
So what you do is write an email to the parking committee and ask for some of that info. Yeah.
Oh.
All right. So moving on to expenses. This drops that we needed to make that 95,000 in your unassigned. So I pulled 35 down in the general government line. The rest of it going to be coming out of contingency, and you'll see that further down the page. Actually, it's like on page. But the rest of these, I just adjusted this parking payroll a little bit because it just is trending more in this direction. And then also there's a lot more expenses. You know, the ticket books are very expensive.
The what?
They're ridiculous.
What is it?
Ticket books.
Yeah. And so anyway, I just feel like that's an more accurate reflection of what we're going to experience. Hotel motel. So if you notice up here, I increased hotel motel by 10,000 because we received 90,000, and we thought for this year 70 because we went very well based on what we thought was happening in the world in March. So I bumped that now to 80. So we've increased that by 10,000. So that 10,000 needs to be split. 5,000 to go to the Visitors Bureau. An additional 5,000 is going to go into Arts and Humanities. Now you say, but Debbie, you increased that by 20. That's because carry forward balance.
Okay.
If we go back to that fund balance over here, here's that carry forward number right here, 60,000. Sorry, this is not nice to see, but I got to add that 60 to my 30, and I get 100. Everybody got that? All right. So coming down here, this is the bulk of your change there on that. Parks and Rec is a little note that you should be aware of. 85% we put in Parks and Rec income has to be assigned to this parks area. So if Parks and Rec up here is, if we bump this number because they're going to have a big event, something like maybe we make that 10,000, we also have to increase the expenses that are being spent. Okay. All right. These are just minor things. Okay, so Planning Commission, we have not paid the second half of the
Comprehensive plan.
It's not there, which I'd anticipated would have been done by the June 30, and it's not. So likewise, as we carry forward balances of income, we're carrying forward an expense that was not incurred, okay? Cost, it was delayed this year till in May, and we've paid the bill to the state also gets a fee, and just today got that bill. So that is why that's up $1,000, because that's an expense that should have been incurred in 25, but is carrying forward into 26. Here's your contingency drop on page 3. Under the city hall total is your contingency line. And then again, referring to my humanity and the plague of using spreadsheets. If you go down into the middle of the police department, look over in the gray column where you see this $12,000 increase. When I transferred this column in first time round, the math didn't transfer. Look at that, 2,100 plus 7,600 is not 65,807. Is everybody with me? Okay, so I had to fix that, and that is due to an increase in all the way across the board. We are experiencing a 16% increase in healthcare costs, healthcare insurance, and so I corrected that math, but that increased that line by 12,000. So overall, your police department went up 12,000. So all of those things together, the profits and the minuses, our total budget increased by 4,300, even though we dropped our carry forward general government line. With the way that this economy is moving, despite what we learned in March, okay, that the increases that we put in here, I believe they are still conservative, and they're getting this 105,000 drop in the carry forward balance. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is what budget and finance will go through painstakingly on every budget revision. As town council, this is what you will get. This is just the summary consolidated format represented by the lines that the state auditor's office is asking for. With a one sheet summary of what's happening within each department. I'm sorry, Jesse's great. Take the page. Page, Jesse. Yeah, there. So that is that where your right hand is. This consolidated set of numbers, not all of that detail. Okay. Again, if anybody is ever concerned about why did this happen, this $12,000 drop, why did this $12,000 increase happen, you can talk to people in budget and finance. You can call me. You know, if we can sort it out ahead of the meeting, not that we're not trying to be transparent, but it just helps kind of understand it ahead of time so you know what you're doing. If you're ever not comfortable, call. Okay, let's go back one page in your notebook. I'm going to pull this up. Yeah. So if you recall, we talked about we were in that uncertain moment in March. We had to back through literally examining every single line of that detailed budget, what we were going to do with the budget. So it was time for me to go through and just pickle it all out and make sure all the math was working. And they said, well, we don't want to have any less than 4 months, I think it was, of reserve, operating reserve. So when we finished that, we ended up with like 4.5 months, and I was able to report to them 4.5 months. This calculation Charlie does for me. So this is just letting you know that now, and actually, I think this is fiscal 25. This is your current fiscal 26 proposal, and we're at 4.23 months of reserve. Now you can see that it has dropped. This is something that budget and finance, and this is I want this to be a little more sophisticated than what it is. We've got revisions in here and proposed and not proposed. I want to kind of nail that down a little bit better so we have better information to work with. But in this moment, what I want to illustrate to you is that we're still around 4 months, even though we had that drop in general government, right? And you saw that in fiscal 25, our revenues were proved out to be even higher than we're predicting now for our income. So I feel pretty confident that we'll be at least here or better by the time we finish the year.
So this is just the practical output of the conservative.
Exactly.
It's the large gauge.
Right. Right. It's just something that budget and finance likes to know and understand and be able to report to, provide assurance to you in making the decision, you know, where we are with our finances. And that we have a backlog. I mean, if something were to happen right now, some grand COVID thing happened and it was transferred by people just bumping into each other on the street and they weren't going to come here anymore, we have 4 months of cash to be able to operate.
It's the closest thing we have to a single metric to say, yeah, we're doing okay.
All right. Now we're going to go to the next page. So these are beautiful, but the state auditor's office wants nothing to do with them. And so the next pages are what we have to send to the state auditor's office when we make a budget revision. The first page is a resolution that you pass that says that you have looked at it and that you're approving it. And it says that the mayor declares that the recording officer who sits at the table is the person who's going to sign it. And just for everybody's reference, we learned in the last administration we got pretty handy with that. If for some reason the recorder wasn't able to make it, at the top of the meeting we establish the recording officer by record, and that person will be able to sign. And that can be any council member that the mayor approves, or that the council table approves. Excuse me. All right. So then beyond that, really, this is so when you receive at the council table a budget revision, you're going to get that single page with the summary, the one that we saw with just the pink and the blue bars, that single page, and you're going to get this document. And so on this document, I can find it here. I think this is it. I hope so. Yeah, it must be. Okay, so on this document are only the accounts on our budget that are moving position in this revision. Okay, so on the first page you get a handful of income and a handful of expense numbers, and if we have more than those, then we have a second page for revenues and a second page for expenses. All of those numbers feed back, all your revenue numbers feed back to here, and all of your expense numbers feed back to here. I left this in Excel form because I want to show you what happens if I make a mistake, or if the entries that I'm making do not make the budget work, because it has to be a zero balance budget. Okay, see this? Out of balance, do not submit. So if I hand you one of these and it says out of balance, you know that I have done something wrong and I haven't given you the proper iteration of this sheet, and do not sign it then.
Your spreadsheet, this is provided by the state?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And to that end, let me also share with you another lovely document. And you will get this by the levy. Right there. So first, this is the actual levy order establishing the rate. Okay, and then here is the entire levy estimate that goes down to the state. It names the council members. It goes to the whole calculation of the evaluation for the properties, and that's all based on the levy number that we put in. And so all this gets done before we actually get to the budget. Then all those numbers are put in by way of their account numbers that you saw, right? And then you've got all your expenses, and they've got them in sequences that, and here's also the coal severance. They've got them in a sequence just by this number, but general government, and then, I think public safety comes next, street and transportation, health and sanitation, culture and recreation. And these are all the numbers that you could potentially use. We don't use them all, right? But a bigger city might. There's your general government number. We have to identify where our audit cost is held if we don't have a separate section for it. This is the oil and gas, so that you have to identify how much money you're spending based on that. We go, this recap thing all gets calculated based on entries that I put in here. I don't do it. It does it on its own. If this doesn't balance, it's going to say, do not sign the cross here. I have to declare everybody's people's salary in council and on staff.
If the state changes these forms, do they change these forms?
Well, no.
Okay, all right.
If they, every time I need to do one of these, or I need to make another revision, I go to their website and I pull down the sheet that they have.
Okay, all
So
right.
I was on the most current.
Okay, okay.
And they will make this for every fiscal year.
Okay.
They may make changes to it, but they give me the one that I should be using.
Okay.
And I have to put in, when I put in our town, I like when I pull this down, this is a drop down.
Okay.
And based on that drop down, it populates all this stuff for me. Yeah. So they've done all that work.
Cool.
Right. Yeah, because I couldn't.
No, you're carrying on.
So this, just the purpose of doing this is just so that you don't see this in a meeting and you're like, what is this animal that I'm looking at? You know what to expect. And also, if I make a mistake, you know what it looks like. And if I don't make a mistake, or if it's balancing, you can be assured because there's not this red writing here. Okay. So anyway, that was the purpose of that exercise. All right. And I think that's the end of that section. Any questions? So now that we have gotten through that, we're going to get into water, a little bit of water in just a minute. But now that we've gotten through that, if you are comfortable with the revision one for fiscal 26, you could entertain a motion to pass that if you want, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Get to that spot. I move to approve fiscal year general fund revision 1 as submitted.
Okay, and then you would need to do the resolution for it, which Kevin has right there.
Yes.
And this is always done by roll call vote.
And do I need to read that?
Wait
a second. Is
There
that
you got a second, right? You moved.
I made the motion.
Okay. So I'm waiting on a second.
Oh, no.
I second.
So it's resolved that subject to approval of the state auditor as ex officio chief inspector of public offices, the municipal council does hereby direct the budget be revised prior to the expenditure or obligation of funds for which no appropriation or insufficient appropriation currently exists as shown on budget revision number 1, a copy of which is entered as part of this record. Chris Craig.
I vote aye.
Jesse Melton.
Hi.
Christian Petroconis.
Yes.
Storm DeCostanzo.
Yes.
And I vote aye, Mayor.
Aye. Result of the tally.
Now, the other item on the agenda that is associated with the general fund is the tree work. And you made your motion originally for the Appalachian work, so that was that is now officially approved. And the tree work is going to come from the street department contracted services. And I want to say that it's like $2,250. Is that what they're asking for?
2,500 up to. I'm sorry, what was the count?
Is this tree down on Fillmore Street?
Mhm. Yes, it is.
What was the account again?
I'm gonna tell you in a minute.
Street, yeah.
Big tree.
The problem, what happened with that was that the property contractor hired by the property owner was gonna deal with the tree, but it's entangled with the power lines. And he was not confident in his ability to do that without causing a problem. And Patty contacted one or two other tree companies, and they were willing to do it. And so since it's in the easement, we are accepting that responsibility.
When the power company comes around and trims trees, who pays for that?
They do.
They do.
But just this tree, I live there, so this tree is across the street from the power lines, but it's possible if they're cutting it, it could wing into these are not the kind of power lines above the tree.
They pay for it when they sweep through as part of their regular initiative.
But I'm saying in this case, this is not directly near.
Okay.
Yes, and
Okay.
I think I may have the same question, like, I don't know, is this the town's responsibility, even though it's a public right of way, if it's being
Right.
initiated by an action of a property owner?
I was on the tree commission, we had a meeting right there at that site. And we gave him approval to take down 2 sets of trees, or there was like 6 trees or something. And we gave him approval to take them down. He took them all but that big one. He left that. Surprised me. The other two were in the entrance. There's a driveway going down the middle of those properties.
So what, the tree committee approved it?
Approved, not this, tree approved, gave them permission to take the trees
I'm
down.
gonna bring Patty in a minute.
I guess the question is, if not for this action taking place on this lot, would the town have removed that tree?
It's a much better way to say that.
These type, I can tell you that, I don't know the name of this tree, but this type of tree is not a good tree to have.
It sheds.
It breaks easy in storms. And
Oh,
this
one of
is a-
those Bradford pears or something.
No, this is big. This is one of those big ones. I have some behind my building. And they can snap and they'll take down.
Silver maple, probably.
No, it's not. No, it's
Hickory?
not an indigenous tree.
Okay.
It's got really big leaves on it. But it breaks really, it actually gets bigger branches high up in the tree.
So we know
you
for-
want to keep.
We know for a fact that this is on our right of way. Fillmore,
We don't have surveys of our.
we know the right of way on Fillmore, I believe it's 40 feet, 20 feet from the center line.
Well, it's probably been, that landowner probably has, surveyed his lot. So we would know.
Maybe that's-
Look at
Here,
that.
it picks up. So Patty's been doing some work on this, so maybe she can help answer any questions.
Okay, so what's happening here, this is on Fillmore Street, and I kind of caught me off guard, I wasn't.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You wanna see the storm has
Do you have the budget and finance thing that
I
I
have a
sent?
sheet here. Yeah.
Okay. So these are lots 4. Well, this tree is in front of lot 4, block LL on Fillmore Street, which is pretty much across from those duplexes. And the developer asked to have trees removed in the right of way. The tree commission met at the site and determined that the trees were trash trees and that they could be taken down. The developer said, I'll pay for it. But there was one tree that has like 3 trunks to it that
It
is
has a what?
has like 3 trunks
Okay.
coming out of it. That is too close to the power line, and they did not feel comfortable taking that down.
Because they didn't feel comfortable taking it down because it's too close to the power line.
Correct,
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
And if you watch how they take trees down, they're not arborists.
Right.
They come in with this big machine,
They're whackers.
cuts it, and it is so big, these 3 trees, that they could go on the power line. Yeah. If you have regular, like, who do we,
Antietam.
Antietam,
Or
for
Viking.
instance, that we wouldn't have any problem.
Yeah.
So,
That's who
But
this,
these guys can't.
So
since,
the trimming, it's not an option. I mean, what, are we removing this tree for the benefit of the property developer?
I'm gonna say yes. And the developer paid for all the other trees to come down, so the town didn't have any expense to take down the other trees in the right of way. It's just that their contractor did not feel comfortable touching this one particular tree. And I didn't, well, it's one tree with 3 trunks into it.
I guess the question is it in the town's interest to do this?
Well, it could fall down.
Well, I mean,
And
this was initiated because someone wanted to improve the property. Failing that, is this something the town would have said, yes, we want to remove this tree? I don't feel it's material that the other ones were taken down, since it was something.
they were much smaller trees.
So they're sticking us with the big bill.
Well,
Yeah.
they, believe me, they have a massive machine sitting there to crush, I mean, grind up these trees that's sitting there.
And they'll do the same with this one. And so
Right.
basically, we're just taking it down.
There is, it's a big tree, and it could fall across the street where the power line is. Power line is not on the same side.
Had the tree commission previously flagged this tree as on the list anywhere?
Not that I'm aware.
I don't know.
That's not, Christie does that.
I mean, I'm hesitant to cater to developers, if we don't know if trimming it isn't a viable possibility. This is going to a pretty extreme resolution when we don't know that trimming it wouldn't be sufficient.
It's
mean-
not that kind of tree.
I don't think-
correct. It's like medium tall tree, and the canopy's way high, it's like
So we're not worried, I'm still not sure what the problem is here. So we're worried about the potential for the tree falling onto the
Right.
power lines. Who owns the tree?
we do.
We do,
do.
the town.
Definitively our tree.
Yeah, it's in the town right away.
someday it's coming down.
So I guess
Whether
that's,
it's now or later.
I guess that's the question. Is it a liability to us in the circumstance that there's a property there now or going to be, that it is in the town's interest to take it down rather than potentially have it come down either on the property or on the power line?
In the event the tree falls, what liabilities does the town have?
Everything.
If it falls on somebody's house, it's
Yeah.
everything.
That's true of anything.
If there are cars on the street, and definitely take the power line, plus the cable, all of it's up there, all those, that's a big line coming through the power line and everything on it.
And the tree committee has made no statement about,
They're willing for it to come down, but the contractor wasn't comfortable,
the tree committee, what was.
was okay with it, yep.
Well, the tree committee was okay with them all coming down.
Right.
The contractor offered to, at his expense, clear, except for the one tree. So the town didn't have to pay the price of the whole length.
What was the fee, Patty?
Well, we put in up to 2,500. I think it came in at 2,250, but we always add a little bit.
That's about right, from my experience.
So from town hall's perspective, what justifies spending these funds?
It'll be risk would be, I mean, that's it, right? I mean,
Vargas, this came up through, this is the request of town hall, correct?
Yes.
So let's see, what's the justification for the town spending this to take the tree down?
risk to public safety.
Okay,
And we also looked, there's the other tree, the talk was, well, maybe we could cut down one or two of them and it would be wide enough to get their driveway through. But Christie said, and I believe her, if we cut one or two of them, it usually kills the rest of them later. They all die together.
So let me ask this, because the giant machine is over there.
It is.
Could the cost of dealing with this later be more expensive because the equipment is not already on the side?
Yes, because they're gonna take it down and leave it, and then the developer is gonna chop it up and grind it and do all the rest.
They're gonna take the
They'll
stump
do the
out and
stump.
everything,
They'll
that's a
do
big deleted tree.
Mhm. It's really a good deal.
okay. I move to approve up to $2,500 for the removal of a tree in the town's right of way, Block LL, Lot 4 along Fillmore Street, out of
750 contracted services.
750 contracted services.
Or second on the motion? Second from, who went up? Christian or?
Oh,
Okay, second from Jesse. Discussion?
All I can say is we wanted the tree done,
Okay.
the tree commission.
Okay.
We gave them permission, but in our hearts, we just knew these trees need to go. These weren't planted, these were just.
Years,
what was the word?
volunteers.
What was the word you used to describe the tree?
Well, it's
A
one.
garbage tree?
Trash.
Other discussion?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'll just say that having asked the questions and having a better sense of the situation, sure, if this development hadn't happened, but now it exists,
Okay.
it's a hazard.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, I'll let the,
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Patty.
that he can, I think it's gonna be scheduled for Monday.
All
But
right.
that lot is they've stopped developing that whole lot. They have to do some more stuff.
Oh, the stormwater remediation.
Whatever. Yeah, tree commission has nothing to do with that.
All right, Debbie.
Okay, on to the water section of the yellow folder. Coming down the home stretch here.
My favorite.
All right, so the water budget in general, you know, we have state mandates surrounding the general fund budget. You know, basically, if we look like we're gonna be, anytime we're approaching overspending or anything like that, we have to revise the budget. That's all mandated by state, and of course, that's obviously a good practice in the water budget as well. But it's not state mandated. This is just really a company that's controlled by the town council. So we do not have all these deadlines associated with our budgeting. We do have a little bit of deadline with the Public Service Commission. There is a point where we have to turn our budgets over to them, and also our lenders, the people who we hold bonds with, do require certain timing of getting our budgets in. So, and this is, July is budget crunch money, number moving time. So the budget numbers that the financials that you have are as of the end of May in front of you, okay? And the first one is that consolidated one that we talked about, where, you know, your numbers are all kind of buttoned up and you don't see the detail behind them. I'm going to show you, we're going to talk in a minute about the reserves, but I just want to show you here the first line. This is SB 234 reserve, which is also called cash working cash reserve. Anticipated total 72,000 as of May was 63. And if you go down a little bit further, this bond renew and replace, that's also your other reserve. We're going to talk about those in just a minute. New taps, capital improvement, capacity fees, interest. Here's your billing revenue. And this is, we have a special billing code for hydrants. We have a special billing code for people who get annual fire services, people who have sprinklers in their buildings, they get a special bill every year. This is the amount of billing that we give to the Public Service District for the service of billing and customer service that we provide to them. This line right here, this is money that we anticipated counting as income from the Renew and Replace Fund to pay for maintenance of mains services. I did the calculation on the actual that we've done up until the end of June, and it's about 50-some thousand. So this number will come up in your June report. Okay. Down in expenses, since this is the buttoned up version, I'm going to ask you to refer to the next report just because we're kind of getting in a little detail here, but this is what you get at council, okay? Next section is your detail. I have to change files on that. Consolidated. Need that anymore? I don't need that anymore. Okay, So one thing that you'll see right here, this bond number, okay, you only saw the big number 233. There's actually 3 bonds underneath there that are pulling this number in. This water bond debt service 2024, that's the new bond with CNB Bank. And that was really a variable. We did not know in this year how much we'd be paying. We knew we'd be doing interest only in the first year, but it's based on what we were drawing out. So we really had to base it on a full bond payment. So that's one of the reasons that you're seeing this kind of a big discrepancy here between budget versus actual, right? We thought this number was going to be a whole lot bigger. Then this is a very old bond. This is the big bond for the water plant. And then down here, where is that little guy? There's another one. And that's the one that's retiring, which is very lovely. It actually has retired. Why can't I find it? Oh, here it is. 424 on the second page, about just not even a quarter of the way down. This is the one that's retired now. So that
Taxes employer.
now 427.3 municipal bond
Oh,
addition.
okay.
So that is a payment of about $4,900 a month, and it has now retired. We will not be pulling any more money. So that is that's a retiring debt that we are holding in our budget going forward, because we're going to use that to pay off this bond up here when it becomes finalized in November. Whatever that big number becomes, we're going to replace paying that debt with the debt that just retired. The other thing that happened in this year is that there was a car payment for one of the trucks, and that also retired. So those 2 pieces of retiring debt are the big components to what's going to end up paying off this debt here, which will become a bigger number as we finish out this distribution system project in the fall. Okay, so there's not as much detail behind these numbers as there is in the general, but like over here, this PEIA benefits, just so that you know, and this is the same on the general fund, but this is the health insurance payment, and then this OPEB is an extra payment that's made to the retirement opportunity for the health insurance. So every month we pay in on behalf of each employee a certain amount of money that goes towards the benefit of health insurance if they were to take it once they retire. We just break out payroll processing and office expenses. So there's really not a whole lot more detail on this, but anyway, I just wanted to illustrate there is a detailed one versus a non-detailed one. All right, next let's talk about these reserves. So we have as of right now, in renew and replace fund, we have $176,000. The way that the reason that we have this reserve is it is a condition of our bond covenant. So when we have borrowed money from the USDA, we borrowed money from the state for other loans that we've made, part of that agreement is that every month we will put 2.5% of the revenue that we receive that month into this reserve fund. And for our lenders, that helps to keep us whole if we have a catastrophe like we did, or we want to do other renew and replacement work to maintenance that we can't really afford inside of our operating budget.
Investment insurance.
Yeah. There's also a state Senate mandated bill that created this fund called Cash Working Capital Reserve. Sometimes it's referred to in this building as SB 234, and that's the bill that initiated this fund. The requirement of this bill is that we hold 1/8 of our total operating and maintenance expenses in any given year in that fund. And if we fall below that amount of money, that 1/8, then we would be required to put a rate increase on our water billing. And then that money that's received from, as like a component of every dollar that came in every month would be in addition to the minimum requirement put into the SB2, into the CWCR until we got up to that 1/8. Then we could take that rate increase off. So it would be a temporary rate increase until that fund returned to the minimum reserve that is required. Now, prior to this last rate increase, we were grandfathered in that we already had 1/8 of our O&M in our CWCR account. So we didn't have to make the monthly payment. But the condition of that grandfathering that came as a result of, this bill or an updated bill after this or something, said that anytime anybody's grandfathered in, the next time they make a rate change up or down, they must then at that moment start contributing to this account, whether they need it or not, whether there's an 1/8 in there or not. The way we contribute is 6.7% of the monthly revenues received. So the first one is 2.5%. The second one is 6.7%. So every month we are taking 9.2% of our revenue received and putting it into these funds. There are more restrictions on spending this CWCR than there are on the renew and replace. And one of the conditions, if I understand it correctly, and I ask you not to quote me because this is complicated and I do like to always check with our attorneys before I start really getting into this. But as I understand it, we would have to have exhausted our renew and replace fund before we could even touch this CWCR. And it is a bit of a conundrum because you're required to put in every month and you just keep building and building and building, yet you can't put your hands on it. I've read some of the recent updates to that bill, and the PSC recognizes that that is a thing, particularly for larger utilities that might have the working capital in their operating budget to make repairs. But small, teeny, tiny utilities ran into such a problem where almost every 2 or 3 months they were having to add the additional tariff on because they were eating this up because of an emergency, that they removed that. They're making the requirement of everyone now. I mean, I foresee in the future a time when these funds are going to get so big that the PSC is going to have to deal with that reality. Mm-hmm. But for now, this is what we're doing. And for now, in that account, we have $215,000.
So those generate interest?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there is also a strategic capital fund of $25,000. It's my understanding from the research that I have done that this money was actually put into an account by the town council to make capital improvements that went towards the feasibility studies that were done for the whole distribution and water plant upgrade. I've not been able to research if that was done from cell tower revenues or where it came from, and we have not touched it as a result until we can either get more information about it or anything, but it's just sitting there, and if there was some grand emergency, we would deal with it at that time to see if it could help us.
And that's something we might take up in budget finance.
Yeah, we might look into that further to see if we can release it or if we have to send it back or what do we do.
When was that?
Long time, like the feasibility study for that project was done like in 2008.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. So I have some history about like what was paid out about it, and they actually contributed to it a couple times. And we can dig into that history and see if we can come up with something.
It's also when the town's finances were much leaner.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna now look at the current budget, but then Jesse, we're gonna look at a little bit of how we address this renew and replace fund on an annual basis. So your next pages are your budget, and this one is, if you take a look at the first 3 columns, the peach column excuse me, yeah, the peach column, and then the change column, and then the pink column. This, no, I guess it's purple on the screen. This is more like what you would see in a normal budget revision in the general fund, where you're going from one iteration of one budget to the next iteration, and you have your where you are in the moment in the middle. So when this was the fiscal 26 budget that was approved, you have your last iteration of 25 that had been approved at the time. You've got the changes that were occurring there, and then, well, actually, yeah, I'm telling you that all. You don't even have an actual column on here. I don't know why. But you should have an actual column in the middle, and then fiscal 26 is what was approved. Okay. Now the important thing about this here is that these meters are coming in, and you're going to be looking at right after this the bid packet, so we can get our bid out on the street and start to get these meters in the ground. So what we did with this was we tried to make a projection. We had hoped back in the spring that we'd have the meters in the ground by September 30th. I think we're going to be a couple months off from that, but not too far. But this just gives you an idea that if we were to receive a 10% increase, this was how much our revenue would change. And this is how much your bottom line would change. And then if we got a 20% increase, this is how much your revenue would change. We've done, and that's just for 3 months of no new meters, 9 months of new meters. So that'll change if like we don't get new meters in the ground until December 31st, right? And of course, these are just projections. We don't know what the reality is. We have some data. We have replaced one large meter, and it is definitely giving us at least 10% over. And are you dialed in all to why we're doing this and why the change is anticipated? And okay, all right.
I know that there was a substantial revenue increase associated with that. I thought it was more of a leakage thing.
No, well, it's both. So it's an unaccounted water loss thing.
Okay.
So unaccounted water loss means that it's either the water is flowing out of the plant, and it's either somehow getting into the ground and not getting into someone's meter that is counted and billed for. So that's an unaccounted water loss, right? The other way that you can have an unaccounted water loss is that the water that's running through your meter is not properly being metered.
Okay.
And so what we're doing in this case is we are taking all of our meters, which are turbine meters, and you know we have very hard water. And you know what happens when that starts?
Same thing as my coffee pots.
Right. And it starts, even though you're pushing the water through, the meter is moving slower. These are going to be contactless meters. They will either function by electromagnetism or by
acoustic.
It's acoustic leak detection.
Right.
Acoustic, yeah.
Acoustic detection. So we will not have any moving parts, and not only will that help us capture the current amount that's flowing through, but the other component that you miss in the turbine is low flow. So, right, because it's going to be harder to push that. Well, these meters will pick up down to the smallest turn on your faucet.
And also, there is a leak detection component potentially that,
within
yes,
the
it
system.
can.
Yeah.
But that's between the meter and the house.
No, to the
Yeah.
system.
No, so this is pertinent because we're going to be talking about it in a minute, but most of these leak detection systems are where one of them is, for instance, where let's say 20% of the meters have a leak detector component to it. And we might be able to actually remove it and move it to another section of the neighborhood. And that leak detector is not only going to be, is going to be listening for noise on the other side of the meter that's running, meaning that there's water running out in the street. It can hear flow and it's not being drawn and alert us to that. So that.
Are we sure about that?
Yes.
And there are a couple different technologies. One of them also, I think that software will compare the flow rates from here to there, and it can basically calculate and predict where a leak might be.
Each of the manufacturers has a different method of going about this. Some of them, their choice in doing this or their method in doing this might not be a component that's on a house meter, but it might be placed out on the main somewhere. So there's various methods, and the bid is designed to say, give us what your method is, right?
But it excludes, non-integrated systems, the bid does. The acoustic leak detection has to be integrated into the meter. It's not a separate system, and it specifically, rejects, transmitters and networking for those systems. So that's what I'm saying, the bid has created a situation where we only have leak detection between the house and the meter itself. On the backside of this, none of that the bid excludes those technologies that allow those things to happen.
No,
Well, each of the vendors has a method for doing leak detection system-wide, but some it's baked in automatically with the meter, other it's an add-on, some there are nodes that you have to place, and it's a really complex bid for that
well,
reason.
you'll see when we get to the bid.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So, okay, so this is the income side, and then behind that, we have the expense side, of what we're doing. One of the big changes is that we, Tom, who was our contracted Class 3 water operator, he was in contracted services, and so that number dropped really big. We have also increased our plant wages, and so that's a big increase, and that's because we added an operator because Tom left. So there's a lot of, anyway, this is just kind of the consolidation of what we look at when we're making the water budget. And this one, did this incorporate the cell tower revenue? I think it did not. So this particular iteration did not include adding the cell tower revenue.
New cell tower revenue?
Huh?
New cell tower revenue?
Well, at
Transfer.
the end of fiscal 26,
Okay.
in fiscal 25, we put here, oh, excuse me, I'm wrong. So here's fiscal 25, right? On the left, and here is
Right.
Yeah.
The 66,000.
is the cell tower. What is
Not
going on?
sure.
No, I just have the right iteration up here.
Okay.
I don't have the right iteration. I think this is just so happens to be the budgeted number for renew and replace. Yeah. But when we did the final revision on fiscal 25, we did add 66,000 in the cell tower revenue. Yes. All right. So that's that one. And again, this is something that budget and finance goes through, and then and sometimes the water commission does too, but mostly it's budget and finance. And I think, oh, one last slide. Okay, so every year, because we have been running into finding major leaks on the road that are pretty complex to repair, maybe for the purpose of just being entirely too large for our equipment and operators to be able to handle, or because they're on Washington Street and require traffic control and things like that that we're not equipped to handle. We have an annual contract with Green Ridge that allows Steve in an emergency to get in touch with them and have them either make a bid on a project and say this is something we want to do in the future, or if it's an emergency, we call them. And that's an annual thing that we do, renewing with them, and every 3 years we bid it. Okay, so that's a thing that we accomplish through the green folder purchasing and procurement stuff. You only have fiscal 26, but I'm gonna back up to fiscal 25. So council, through the year, can't find my shrinker. Help me, Storm. Where is the shrinky?
Oh, is it me?
Right.
It's under view. No, you don't have view. There it is.
Yeah.
Oh, there's also a little slide bar in the lower right.
Yeah, you're right. Slide bar. Okay, this is better. All right. So last year we had a lot of things going on in terms of emergencies and work that really needed to be done to our mains. So I gave council an idea what was going on at the end of fiscal 24. We thought that we were going to have to match the meter project for $125,000. And so we said we would take $100,000 out of our renew and replace and 25 out of our operating. We now know that that's going to be picked up by the governor's office, so we alleviated that from here. Then we had some maintenance of mains work planned. Our anticipated fiscal 25 contributions were over here. And so then I rolled that over here, and there were a lot of decisions that council had to make about, do they want to do this work? Do they not want to do this work? Steve came, explained the priority of problems. Was it going to be in the project? Wasn't it? Blah, blah, blah. And they were able to make decisions about whether or not they wanted to contract this work. And so and then I reported back, okay, this happened. This was the actual invoice number. There were also times where we had contracted for work to be done, and it was a shared expense between us and the customer, and so that money came back into the coffers. In that case, I didn't take that out of renew and replace in the end, because it was money that was coming back to us, and I can't just stick that in the reserve because it didn't come through the conventional manner. So this kind of tallies all that up, and if we start entering into those situations as the year goes on, and you're presented with a decision to whether or not we should spend for renew and replace, this is what you will get. Right now, the only thing that we anticipate and has been approved by council is meter pit restoration in preparation of the meter project. Many of our meter pits are not in good condition and cannot receive the new meters. Steve went around with the contractor. They estimate, council approved up to about $42,000 for that work to be done. The other thing that needs to be done, and we do not have a number on it yet, and so that will be coming to you before the contract is begun for the meters. The large meter pits that we have need to have a mechanism in them that is like a loop that allows the meter to come out and be tested without stopping water flow. Our pits are not set up that way. So he is going to be getting a quote from Greenridge so that can be done by them ahead of time. You may say to yourself, well, why not just throw it into the bid? And the reason for that is that that is a federal government bid. American Steel, Buy American, all that needs to be included, makes it more expensive. And because this is just a meter swap bid, it really doesn't require a distribution system contractor. And if we put this in there, it makes the bid a lot more complicated for the person who is bidding. If they are just a meter company and they hire somebody to just swap out the meters, that's one thing. But if now they have to get into distribution system work, it makes their bid a lot more complex. So it was recommended that we do this through our renew and replace work. And then we don't have to be worried about all that confinement.
Can I run something into a little detail that you might not all be aware of? But when I replaced the entire water system in St. John's up here, my water pressure was 85 pounds square inch, which is extremely, and my plumber was shocked if it was that high. And so now I had to put a meter on out in the building when the water comes in, bring it down to 40 to 50. When you have your water pressure that high, it hammers your appliances, your dishwasher, you're going to get leaks. So I'm just saying, I don't know if we could tell people their water pressure. They may not be aware of it. Let them go to a plumber and get one of those things put on.
Well, the new meters will tell us.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that in the distribution system project that the next phase, you might help me remember, everybody at the table, but I believe we do something with the vault at the corner of the school. And that is, I think, to help with that.
No, I remember the pressure reducing vault at, I don't know, further down on Washington, but I think that is correct.
There's a vault up at at the corner of the school though, and I think that might, I'm not sure if that's its purpose, but I think it is.
My plumber was shocked. I mean, he couldn't believe how high.
Well,
I'm not on a high.
just imagine if that's what it is there, and then you're at Storm's house.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's all we got there.
One
Any
question,
other
Debbie, does this reflect the agreement that I signed with PSD on the repayment last week? Is that reflected in here?
No, that's a cash flow thing, and
Okay.
might want to be discussed in executive session, but that's really all that was billing that was already accounted for in our income.
And we never
Right.
received it.
Okay. Any other questions on anything you've seen so far? Don't shut down the Zoom meeting. Stop share. Where's my share? Yeah, I don't think I was sharing. Okay, sorry about that, if I wasn't. Okay, so the last thing then is the bid packet. So this is a mammoth document. Let me explain where it is in the scope of reviewing. I've gone through it pretty painstakingly. Steve is going through it. Our water attorney has gone through it and found a few boilerplate contradictions that he and the engineer are working out that just have to do with, you know, you have to have this document here, you have to have that document there. It doesn't really change the scope of the document. The EPA has been, they have received it. They are going through it for compliance with their needs and also the scope of the bid. I think I might have pointed out to you a couple of the pages that were pertinent, which now I will attempt to locate, but also specifically so that I can address kind of some of the things that Jesse was asking about. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So the main purpose of this, as noted on in the advertisement here, is replacement of approximately 900 residential water meters, meter reading equipment and software, and all required appurtenances. What we want to do is go to a contactless meter system that, for metering the water, that also provides us electronic collection of meter data, either by a drive-by radio read system, and that would be where we would have small data collectors in our town vehicles, and as our town employees drive around the town, we would put like one in Larry's truck and possibly in the police department vehicles, and of course in the water trucks. As they drive around town and they drive past people's homes, data will collect in there. When they come back and they pull in town hall, and that data then connects to our Wi-Fi and it goes into our data system here. And I believe we'll also have a data collector down at the water plant. So, and they'll talk to each other. Another way, and then if at some point we don't, let's say something's happening, you feel like there's something going on at your house, Jesse, you want to get a meter reading, it's the middle of the month, and we don't have the data on that recently, so we'll just drive over there. And those chips also are supposed to pick up history. So even though you might not have had a meter reading on Tuesday, and you might have experienced the initiation of a problem on Tuesday, and we don't have a current reading and it's Thursday, when you go back and you pick up that hit, it's going to pull all that information, is my understanding. Mm-hmm. Which might say to you, oh yeah, you did have a real big hit on Monday and Tuesday, and you said, yeah, my 14 cousins came, I forgot all about that, right? So that is an integrated part of what we want to get, is that history, what's going on in everybody's meter. And that can be done by the drive-by. It can also be done by what that's called AMR, or there's AMI, which means that we would have some towers to collect the data. So it wouldn't require a drive-by, except for those places where we might get a no read. And so there would be some tucked away places where maybe the tower can't reach. Occasionally we just have, once or twice a week, we have somebody to drive over there, again, if by request. So this base bid is set up to do the AMR, the drive-by. Included in that base bid is also the software to pull up that together, any kind of electronic components that are needed to give us the visuals of what's going on, alarm systems, because they would typically will, like if your meter's screaming, Kathy should be able to see on her screen, look, I got a red dot here, who is that? And can maybe get in touch with you.
That's AMI. That's AMI.
Either one.
But AMR doesn't report, it has to be drive-by report.
It is, that's the big benefit of the AMIs. It's more real time, except for those dropout spots.
Right.
And the idea is that there could be a screen at town hall and one at the water plant.
Well, that's what I'm saying though, that functionality is part of AMI, not the AMR that this bid covers.
It still does, but it's not going to be, it's going to be dependent on when the data is collected.
Right.
You won't have the real time.
Right. It's historic.
Yes.
It's historic,
Right.
yeah.
No, it's historic too.
So the meter thing will be here, the thing that collects information will be in town hall, not
AMR.
I think we may, it's going to depend on each vendor, whether they put, I mean, we will definitely have one here. We may have one down there. Yeah. So that's AMR. There's Then what we do is we have alternates to the bid. Okay, so,
And just sort of overall, AMR is generally cheaper than going to AMI. That's why we're starting with AMR.
right, so one of the alternates is to drop the AMR and make it an AMI. So that's alternate number 2. Another alternate is to work with is the large water meters, which we want to do them anyway, but we want to know what that is separately. Because if we get into a money punch, we may end up doing that ourselves, right? The third alternate is leak detection. So this would be where they tell us what their leak detection system is, and they offer it to us as an add-on, and we can decide whether we want to take that or not. The fourth alternate is a customer portal, which they all seem to have some component to, and it might not be super sophisticated, or it might be really sophisticated, where you can sign up with it and it's on your smartphone and it tells you when you got a screaming meter, right? So, even in the case of AMR, if you had drive-by and you had this, the customer got it on their phone because they're in their house, it would be a little bit better.
I mean, it doesn't communicate. Oh, yeah, I get that it's better, but I mean, I just think the expectations are based on the actual what's in the bid, and the expectations that I'm hearing, I'm not sure they're aligned. If you've got a leak at your property, you're not going to pick that up unless the technician does a drive-by, and then there's a physical step in there. It's not wireless data transfer. The bid actually calls for the conversion to a CSV file to import into the other systems. And all I'm saying is this is not a seamless thing. There's several steps involved here, and I would really like to have expectations.
So when you so tell me about so you're saying that it's requiring a conversion to make it go in there, or it's not instantaneous? So it's not instantaneous.
Yeah, in AMR, there's no instantaneous.
Are you saying that you saw that in here, or?
The bid requires it sets the format for the flat file for the data transfer between the drive-by meter system and the UB4 system to get that information into
Yeah, I just don't know if they're.
Okay, but UB4 and the AMR system are two different things.
Yes,
right.
But to make any of that talk, there's not going to, this is where the middleware thing comes in, and that's a missing component here, is there's no real direct connection between the UB4 system and the AMR system. The numbering and the account allocations are entirely different. So those have to be consolidated in between somewhere, and that's done with the middleware.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. So let me see if I understand. So sitting at Kathy's desk, she has her computer that has the UB4 system on it, which is the billing software. And then she's also going to have a screen that shows the water system that's provided by the meter people. My understanding of what's going to happen is that on an AMR, there's going to be a drive-by. Somebody comes back into town. That data is going to feed the screen. And when Kathy's ready to bill, it's going to pull in to UB4.
Actually, I remember having this discussion with the vendors, and our billing system is called Kuzi. That there was discussion about each of them saying, yes, they could integrate. I don't know the specifics on exactly what they would be doing, but each of them at least seem confident. They're also trying to sell us on their own billing systems, but that they could.
Well, the integration is the middleware component.
Yes.
And the specification that the requirements in this bid document are specifying the general format for that. It's calling for a common delimited or common separated value flat file. And so that means that there is no automatic integration between the two. you know, so the file has the CSV file has to be created and exported, and then imported into the other system to have any visibility. And there's since the UB4 system and the AMR system are completely separate systems, there's no direct correlation. So your middleware looks at 0001, the meter over here, and then ties it to the address and the account for this person over here. But that's not a seamless thing. You have to do this thing in the middle.
I'm guessing, I was not involved in this level of detail, but they wrote the spec this way to enable each of the bidders to propose how they might integrate versus specifying a method that might not work.
Right. Well, that probably is the case, but that's part of my problem is we are specifying, we are putting people into this
Okay.
commit.
All right, so I think I understand what you're saying. I envision it that we should be able to help someone and identify a leak with that screen that I'm seeing in my mind without having to talk to you before.
Well, I understand Jessica's concern.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, I get the concern that you have to make a physical download.
Well, that we are specifying a technical solution that maybe.
So, if you can help me find where that is, I'm gonna ask the engineer about it.
And I would like to offer sort of my whole thing is I'm really good at taking what you see in your head and making that into a spec that'll because a bid is a tool, right? And you know, we can make this a high performance tool and we could really do the best for the town, or we can just get it to go. And what this current thing is, it's okay. It will bid. It's out there. But the way it is now, and there are several issues, we're limiting the opportunity for participation. So we're cutting down the number of people who are going to want to be involved because of specifications that we require, some of which are physically impossible. I mean, there are some material issues. And so if we can, I know we want to get it because there's a revenue component attached. I did not realize, and I understand we want to get the money, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're actually going to be able to get that and make sense of what we're gaining out of that. And, you know, right now we're limiting participation. We're opening ourselves up to some pretty shady, like if an opportunistic proposer came along, there is opportunity in this bid to exploit to our detriment financially. And, you know, I speak to this from experience because that was my job, was to find out how to exploit these small companies so we could reduce the bid that we were making for their company. And these things are there. And I don't know these vendors, but I do realize, I do know the risk. And the third thing that concerns me here is that in the bid, some of the specifications are straight cut and paste from a particular manufacturer's website, which is fine. And if we're going to go that route, so the bid is using those manufacturers. I was able to figure out who the manufacturer was because they're the only people. These are unique requirements in the bid, and they're unique to specific products. And if we want to go with a specific vendor, we can do that. You know, we ethically based on internal review. You know, we've got a world-class engineer. This, you know, with Steve, he says, "Hey, this vendor is a good match. They've got a solid product." We can specify that in the bid requirement that we want the bid to be built around these products. And the advantage to doing that is if we name a vendor in there, we can call the potential vendor up, and they will communicate directly with us. It's not some nebulous thing. We call them and say, "Hey, we've got 897 1-inch meters, or 5/8 meters, whatever, and we want to implement these in our town. We would like your input in the system design, and here's what all these other things that are in here." And the only reason I'm saying this is if we're going to obtusely specify a product, we're better off specifying the exact product that we want instead of doing it how it's done. Well, I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that's what the bid's done, is it's defined the Camstrop 2200 family of products.
So let's just be careful with things that should be in maybe executive session versus not. We want to protect our vendors and potential providers.
Okay.
That's one thing just to be mindful of, because this is a bid that is not public on the street yet.
Okay.
Working with the EPA, they will not allow us to specify a single.
Okay.
What we've done, I believe, in those places where model suggestions have been made is it said or the like, or similar, or something like that.
Well,
And
it's not
that's very intentional. That's really the only way that we were
Okay.
able to make a suggestion about what we're really looking for.
Because like one of them in particular are the connection specifications, on where the pipes plug in on both sides. Those specifications only belong to a single vendor in the entire industry.
Okay.
And those are,
So I think I
Do it again, yeah.
yeah. So we should get together. And we need to do that very soon. We also, this is our engineer who we are paying to do this, and they will be responsible for being the engineers who drive this project. So we have to, whatever our concerns are with this, we will turn over to them to redo. This, something to remember about how this came together is that the original distribution system, which was only supposed to cost us $3 million back in the day, included all this pipe work that we've now cut up in all these things and these new meters. So it had to be extracted from this gigantic contract. And there were a lot of things that were in there that I've already had tossed out that didn't have anything really to do with it.
Okay.
But things that you find that may be hindering us, that maybe are unintentionally left in there. There might be a lot of that.
Okay.
I found that. But I think what we need to do is,
two things. One is in these things I'm saying, I'm not attacking whoever put this bid together. These are just things I noticed. And just something to bear in mind is we're paying an engineer to develop a document that will work. And there are a lot of times in contracts, there are performance and things that we can gain on the backside that mean nothing to the engineer.
Mhm.
So, if we can find something on this side, that's advantageous for us that the engineer is not going to be looking for because it's meaningless to him.
Mhm.
And that's,
I understand that. And there's actually been things like that I've pointed out to him that, he needs to put in there. So, yeah, I think if you have that level of detail noted, then we need to get together as soon as possible so I can convey that to him, because I've already sent this to the EPA. So if we're gonna make any material changes to it,
Do it quickly.
we need to do that quickly.
But it would be great to have a subject matter expert weigh in on it, yes.
Can I ask one more thing on this? There are new homes being built in this area. Are they incorporated in this bid?
Well,
there's 6 houses.
They
being
will
built
get,
right now. Or will we?
yes, they are included in the up to 900. And the meters that will be put into the ground will not be turbine meters. So if for some reason they are not compatible with what we end up purchasing through this, they will be replaced or they will just be used with that system. So the 900 meters will allow for that additional occupancy.
There's like 3 houses. There's the 4 over there. There's 2 up here.
Yep.
But
We are not putting turbine meters in the ground on those. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's extra work.
And I had just one detail question that came up on the PDF. It was page 230, which I don't know what that's. But yeah. Well, it mentions specifically that the project was in the towns of Harpers Ferry and Bolivar. Are we not going to cover the county then?
Oh, we are. Yeah, that's probably just.
So-
I think that's in the front though, is it not?
the Jefferson County, the service area is defined. I don't know what page it's on in there, but I read through this whole thing and it's definitely.
Yeah, but there's that one page where it's very specific. It says these will be in the
Okay.
towns of,
All right. Well, let me just mark that down. It's 2:30.
yeah,
Take
it's
your pen.
the PDF page.
All right, anything else for Debbie on this?
So I guess what we'll do is set our sights on having this approved at the regular council meeting. But I would suggest, I'll meet with Jesse, we'll get things off to the engineer, get it back, and I'm gonna send it back out to you, but this is a mammoth document. I would suggest that we not try to edit it at the table.
No.
So if you have any thoughts, let's get them to me ahead of time. Yeah.
Whatever you guys say.
Definitely need to move quick on it, yeah.
All right. What else we got?
That's it.
What else is in here, Storm? Did we
So-
cover everything?
Yeah, we did.
Thank you, Deb. That was,
Thank you.
represents an immense amount of work, and I feel like these colored folders will travel with us for the next 2 years.
We have really I think every year we have added to,
Make it smoother.
making it smoother,
clear.
making it clear, making a system that can be followed. Yep. And carried forward.
If you don't mind me saying that in the last 25 years, I've spent a lot of time listening to finance people, big time finance people, and you are as fine of a finance person.
Yeah,
as
here,
I am.
here.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very,
And I mean it.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for the finance when I came in here.
That's the goal.
She is the jewel.
I will also say, I'm really excited about the meter project.
Yes.
I just think it's gonna be a game changer for our water works.
I never thought I'd be this excited about water meters, but here we are.
All right, anything else before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn, that was Jesse, seconded by Storm. No discussion, all those in favor, we are out of here at,